Imagine a world without books, without maps, without any written language at all, yet a world where people still knew exactly where they were, not just on the land, but in the cosmos, in the story of existence itself. Long before GPS or even the first scribbled symbols on a cave wall, human beings were navigating reality using something far more profound: myth maps. These weren't charts of geography, but guides to the soul, to the stars, to the very structure of meaning. For thousands of years, these maps, woven from story, symbol, and sacred ritual, shaped how our ancestors understood life, death, purpose, and their place within an often mysterious and overwhelming universe. We're about to embark on a journey through 25 of these extraordinary mythic guides, each one a window into the inner world of an ancient culture. From the Aboriginal songlines that chart creation itself across the Australian desert, to the Norse world tree Yggdrasil connecting 9 realms of gods and monsters, to the intricate spiritual cartography of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, these maps did more than describe. They directed, they comforted, they warned, they inspired. They were living blueprints for how to live, how to die, and how to belong to something greater than oneself. And what's truly remarkable is that these maps aren't just relics. They live on in the ways we still search for meaning, in the stories we tell, even in the symbols hidden in plain sight within our modern world. So if you've ever looked up at the night sky and felt a sense of wonder, or walked through an ancient forest and sensed a presence larger than yourself, you've already brushed up against the echoes of these myth maps. This video is an invitation to go deeper, to uncover the hidden layer of human consciousness that flourished for millennia before the written word, and to understand how these ancient guides continue to shape not only history, but the very way we see reality today. You're about to discover how entire civilizations oriented their lives around cosmic trees, underworld rivers, and star paths that were far more than myth. They were maps to being human. So what exactly are these myth maps we've been hinting at? Think of them not as something you hold in your hands to find your way to a river or a mountain, but as something you hold in your mind to find your way through life itself. They are symbolic guides, intricate mental models of the universe that ancient cultures built using the most powerful tools they had: story, art, ritual, and song. A geographical map shows you where you are in a landscape. A myth map shows you who you are within the entire cosmos. It answers the profound, universal human questions that have echoed through the ages, questions about our origins, our purpose, our morality, and our ultimate destiny. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What happens when we die? These are the coordinates that myth maps were designed to chart. They served as the ultimate blueprint for reality, providing a structured, shared understanding of existence that brought order to a seemingly chaotic and unpredictable world. In an era without formal science or written history, these maps were the foundational operating systems for human consciousness. They offered comfort by explaining terrifying phenomena like thunderstorms or eclipses not as random events, but as part of a larger, divine narrative. They provided guidance by embedding moral codes into captivating stories about heroes, gods, and ancestors, illustrating the consequences of virtue and vice. And perhaps most importantly, they fostered an incredible sense of belonging, connecting every individual to their community, to their environment, and to a cosmic story that gave their lives profound meaning. Consider how this worked in practice. For the Aboriginal cultures of Australia, the Dreamtime was not a myth in the sense of being untrue. It was a living, breathing map of the entire continent. Their songlines are a perfect example, intricate oral maps that weave together topography, genealogy, and lore. As they sang the stories of ancestral beings who formed the land, they were simultaneously navigating vast distances, recalling vital water sources, and reinforcing the sacred laws that governed their society. The land itself was a text, and the song was its legend. On the other side of the world, the Norse people looked to the great ash tree, Yggdrasil. This wasn't just a fancy story about a big tree. It was a sophisticated cosmological model. Its roots and branches mapped out the 9 distinct realms of existence, from the lofty home of the gods in Asgard to the shadowy underworld of Hell. This map provided a framework for understanding everything from the cycle of day and night to the nature of fate itself, all while reinforcing cultural values of courage and resilience in the face of inevitable conflict and chaos. These structures allowed incredibly complex philosophical and spiritual ideas to be encoded into accessible, memorable, and transferable formats. A farmer in ancient Mesopotamia might not understand a philosophical treatise on the nature of the soul, but he could understand the detailed journey through the underworld described in the Epic of Gilgamesh. A child in a Native American tribe might learn the moral values of their people through the simple yet profound symbolism of the medicine wheel, understanding balance, direction, and the interconnectedness of all life. This is the genius of the myth map. It democratizes deep wisdom. It turns abstract, intimidating concepts into narratives you can tell around a fire, into symbols you can carve into a totem, into dances you can perform under the stars. They were the original user interface for the human experience, designed for intuitive use by everyone in a culture, from the eldest shaman to the youngest child. By examining them, we don't just learn about ancient myths, we learn how entire civilizations thought, how they made sense of their world, and how they built shared realities that could endure for thousands of years. This foundational concept is our key to unlocking the true power of the specific examples we're about to explore. Our journey into these 25 myth maps begins in the vast, sun-drenched landscapes of Australia, with what is perhaps the most profound and beautiful example of all, the Aboriginal Songlines. To truly grasp their significance, picture a map that is not drawn on parchment or stone, but sung into existence, a living atlas carried in the memory and performed with the voice. These songlines, also known as dreaming tracks, are the ultimate expression of a myth map, seamlessly weaving together the physical geography of the continent with the sacred stories of its creation. They are the arteries of Aboriginal culture, pulsing with the rhythm of the ancient past and guiding every aspect of life in the present. A songline traces the epic journey of an ancestral being, a creator spirit often taking the form of an animal or natural force as it moved across the primordial landscape. Every step these beings took, every action they performed, left an indelible mark on the world, forming hills, carving out rivers, depositing waterholes, and scattering unique flora and fauna in their wake. The path of this journey became a songline, and the song itself is a detailed, melodic map. By singing the sequence of verses that describe the ancestors' actions and the landmarks they created, a person could navigate across hundreds of miles of desert, knowing exactly where to find water, shelter, and food sources. The melody and rhythm of the song would change to mirror the contours of the land, a long, flat note for a long, flat plain, a series of quick, high notes for a rocky, uneven climb. The song didn't just describe the land, it was the land translated into music. Take, for instance, the legendary Seven Sisters songline, one of the most extensive and well-documented tracks. This epic song cycle follows the flight of a group of sisters, represented by the stars of the Pleiades cluster, as they are pursued across the sky and land by a powerful, desire-filled being. The song maps a route that stretches from the central deserts all the way to the coast, a journey of thousands of kilometers. Each verse corresponds to a specific location, a specific part of the story. To sing the song in its correct order is to mentally and spiritually travel that entire distance, connecting the singer to countless other groups and countries along the way, all of whom hold a part of the same story. This creates an incredible web of interconnectedness, where the mythology binds over 300 different language groups into a single, shared cosmological understanding. But the purpose of the songlines extends far beyond mere physical navigation. They are the fundamental repository of law, ethics, and history. The stories embedded within them dictate the proper ways to interact with the environment, with other people, and with the spiritual realm. They encode rules about kinship, marriage, and resource management. A songline teaches why a certain waterhole is sacred and must be approached with respect, or how a particular rock formation came to be and what taboos surround it. This isn't abstract knowledge, it's practical, vital information for survival and social harmony. The act of singing these songs during ceremonies, often accompanied by dance and body painting, wasn't just a performance. It was an act of preservation, of education, and of worship, a way of continually renewing the world by ritually walking the paths of the creators. This is why anthropologist Bruce Chatwin so poetically referred to them as the longest historical narrative in the world. We are not talking about a history recorded in books, but an unbroken oral tradition that has been continuously performed and renewed for over 60,000 years, making it the oldest surviving cultural map on Earth. It represents a way of knowing the world that makes no hard distinction between the practical and the spiritual, the map and the territory, the past and the present. When an elder sings a songline, they are not recounting a history that happened long ago. They are participating in that creation story here and now, reaffirming their responsibility to care for the country that was sung into existence. This profound, holistic integration of knowledge offers a timeless lesson, reminding us that a map is at its most powerful when it guides not just our feet, but our hearts and our morals as well. Now, let's travel from the sun-scorched plains of Australia to the mist-shrouded fjords and frozen forests of ancient Scandinavia, where an entirely different kind of myth map took root, one not sung into the land but growing from it. At the very heart of Norse consciousness stood a colossal cosmic pillar, the immense evergreen ash tree known as Yggdrasil. To imagine this world tree is to envision the entire universe not as a collection of separate, distant places, but as a single, living, interconnected organism. Its massive branches stretch high into the heavens, cradling the gleaming home of the gods, while its three great roots tunnel deep into the wells of the past, present, and future, anchoring the realms of giants and the dead. This was far more than a simple story. It was a complete cosmological model, a spiritual GPS for the Viking soul, navigating a world defined by both brutal hardship and profound beauty. Yggdrasil's genius lies in its intricate, layered structure, which mapped the 9 distinct realms of existence onto a single, comprehensible symbol. High in its upper branches rested Asgard, the walled citadel of the Aesir gods like Odin and Thor, a realm of order and power. Further down, nestled among the trunk's middle branches, was Midgard, our world, the realm of humanity, encircled by a vast ocean and protected from the chaotic outer realms. And coiling deep beneath the earth, gnawing at the tree's very roots, was the serpent Jörmungandr, a creature of such immense size that it encircled the entire world of men, biting its own tail. This wasn't random mythology, it was a sophisticated diagram of reality. The Well of Erd, one of the 3 great roots, was where the Norns, the Norse equivalents of the Fates, dwelled. They carved runes of destiny into the tree's roots, governing the laws of the cosmos for both gods and mortals alike, illustrating that no one, not even Odin the All-Father, was above the ultimate laws of fate. This map provided a crucial framework for understanding and enduring the harsh realities of Viking life. For a people constantly facing the peril of the open sea, the uncertainty of harvests, and the ever-present shadow of conflict, the world could seem terrifyingly chaotic. Yggdrasil offered a powerful counter-narrative, a vision of an ordered, structured universe. The tree itself was under constant threat, from the serpent Nidhogg gnawing its roots, from the stag eating its leaves, from the decay of its own trunk. Yet it endured, it persevered. This was the ultimate lesson. The cosmos was not a place of perfect peace, but a system of dynamic, eternal struggle that required constant vigilance and resilience to maintain. This myth map taught that chaos and order were not opposites, but intertwined forces in a perpetual dance, and that courage was found in fighting for order, even knowing the struggle might never truly end. This worldview directly shaped the values and actions of the Norse people. The concept of Ragnarök, the prophesied twilight of the gods, was not a tale of hopelessness, but the ultimate expression of this map's guidance. It was a destined, cataclysmic battle where even the gods would fall, and the world would be consumed in fire and flood. Yet, the myths foretold that a new, green world would eventually emerge from the waters, and a new generation of gods and humans would inherit it. This knowledge didn't lead to despair, it fostered a profound and fearless courage. If even the gods were doomed to fight a battle they knew they might lose, then the only honorable path for a Viking was to face their own battles with the same unwavering resolve. It was a map that didn't promise safety or victory, but instead offered something more powerful: meaning. It provided a spiritual compass, orienting a person toward bravery, loyalty, and acceptance of their fate or weird. Scholar H.R. Ellis Davidson perfectly captured this when she wrote that Yggdrasil embodied the Norse concept of an ordered universe. It was a fixed point in a turbulent existence, a central axis that everything else revolved around. By contemplating this great tree, an individual could locate themselves within the vastness of the cosmos. A simple act of kindness wasn't just a personal choice, it was a small stand for order against chaos. An act of betrayal wasn't just a social transgression, it was a crack in the very foundations of the world. This holistic view fostered a deep sense of responsibility and consequence, embedding the idea that every human action, no matter how small, sent ripples through the roots and branches of all creation. From the Aboriginal songlines that mapped meaning onto the horizontal landscape, we now see the Norse mapping it vertically onto a world tree that connected everything from the highest heavens to the deepest underworld, proving that the human impulse to find our place is universal, even if the maps we draw are wonderfully unique. From the icy, windswept branches of Yggdrasil, our journey now takes us to the dry, sun-baked banks of the Nile, where an entirely different kind of guide was being crafted, one not for the living to navigate the world, but for the deceased to navigate what comes after. If the Norse map was a cosmic tree connecting realms, the ancient Egyptian map was a detailed, step-by-step guidebook for the most perilous journey imaginable, the passage through the underworld. This was the Book of the Dead, or as the Egyptians themselves called it, the Book of Coming Forth by Day. It wasn't a single, standardized book as we think of it today, but a collection of magical spells, prayers, and most importantly, incredibly vivid illustrations, often customized for an individual and buried with them as their most crucial companion for the afterlife. Imagine yourself as an elite Egyptian, perhaps a scribe or a noble, in the moments after your death. Your body is mummified, your name is preserved, but your spirit, your Ba, now faces the terrifying and confusing landscape of Juat, the Egyptian underworld. This was not a single destination but a treacherous, labyrinthine realm filled with lakes of fire, gates guarded by knife-wielding demons, and monstrous serpents like the great Apep, who sought to annihilate the sun itself each night. Without a map, a soul would be lost forever. This is precisely what the Book of the Dead provided, a literal, illustrated survival guide. A typical papyrus scroll would be covered in hieroglyphs and beautiful, colorful vignettes that acted as a visual itinerary, showing the soul exactly which path to take, which demon to appease with which spell, and which password to recite at each of the 21 gates to safely pass through. The absolute centerpiece of this cartography of the soul, the moment every Egyptian both feared and hoped for, was the weighing of the heart ceremony. This was the ultimate moral reckoning, a scene depicted in exquisite detail in the Book of the Dead. The deceased would be led by the god Anubis into the Hall of Judgment, where their heart, the seat of intelligence, memory, and morality, would be placed on a giant golden scale. On the other side of the scale was not a weight but the feather of Maat, representing truth, justice, and cosmic order. The entire pantheon of gods would watch as the scales were balanced. If the heart, heavy with sin and falsehood, sank lower than the feather, it would be immediately devoured by the terrifying, crocodile-headed monster Ammit, the devourer of the dead, resulting in the soul's second permanent death. But if the heart was as light as the feather, a triumph achieved through a life of virtue, the god Thoth would record the result and the deceased would be presented to the enthroned Osiris, god of the underworld, to be granted eternal life in the blissful field of reeds. This single, powerful image of the scales was the engine of the entire myth map. It wasn't just a test you crammed for at the end of life. It was a moral roadmap that influenced every single day of an Egyptian's existence. The declarations made to the gods during this ceremony, often written as spell 125 in the Book of the Dead, are a profound list of negative confessions. I have not stolen. I have not lied. I have not caused anyone to weep. I have not killed. To ensure they could truthfully say these things, an Egyptian was compelled to live by them. This myth map, therefore, was a powerful force for social order and ethical behavior, promoting honesty, community responsibility, and piety. It provided a clear and terrifyingly tangible consequence for one's actions, making the abstract concept of morality vividly real. As the renowned Egyptologist Erich Hornung so aptly described it, the Book of the Dead was indeed a detailed cartography of the beyond. It mapped a spiritual geography with the precision of a surveyor, but its true genius was in how it mapped the human conscience. The vivid imagery of solar barks carrying the sun god through the 12 hours of night, the serpent demons, and the resurrected Osiris provided a mental landscape that offered immense comfort. It transformed the unknown void of death into a known, navigable journey with a hopeful destination. This gave individuals and the entire culture a profound sense of agency in the face of mortality. They weren't passive victims of fate. They were active participants equipped with the right knowledge, the right spells, and a moral compass, guided by a map that promised that a righteous life would indeed lead to an eternal dawn. While the Egyptians were mapping the intricate passageways of the afterlife, another great river valley civilization was constructing a myth map of breathtaking scope and ambition, one that sought to explain not just the journey after death, but the very architecture of the universe itself. This was the Mesopotamian cosmic geography, a model of reality born from the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a world so potent and logically satisfying that it would dominate human thought for millennia. Imagine the entire cosmos not as an infinite, empty space, but as a finite, layered structure, almost like a divine piece of furniture or a magnificent, enclosed temple. At its base, the Earth was not a planet spinning in a void, but a flat, circular disk floating upon a vast, endless sea of fresh water, the Apsu. This earthly disk was itself divided, with the known civilized world of Mesopotamia at its center, surrounded by mysterious, chaotic lands and a bitter ocean. Above this terrestrial plane arched the most crucial feature of this cosmic map, the Shamash, the solid dome of the heavens. This was not a metaphor. It was believed to be a physical, hammered brass firmament that held back the upper waters, a celestial ocean that existed above the sky. This dome was punctured by tiny holes through which this water occasionally seeped, falling to the earth as rain. Embedded within this solid dome were the stars, the planets, and the moon, not distant balls of gas and rock, but luminous divine beings moving along their predetermined paths. The sun god Shamash would emerge each morning from a gate in the east, travel across the inner surface of the dome, and exit through a western gate at dusk to journey through the underworld beneath the earth, bringing light to the dead before beginning the cycle again. Below the earthly disk lay the final realm, the Urkala or Kur, a dusty, dark underworld for the souls of the deceased, a joyless place from which there was no return. This entire, magnificent structure was not a random occurrence but a carefully governed hierarchy, a cosmic state with a clear chain of command. At the pinnacle of this order sat Marduk, the patron god of Babylon, whose epic rise to power is detailed in the creation myth Enuma Elish. After defeating the primordial sea goddess Tiamat, who represented the forces of chaos, Marduk did not simply destroy her. He used her divided body to craft the universe itself, fashioning the dome of heaven from one half and the platform of the earth from the other. This act was the ultimate expression of turning chaos into cosmos. The other major gods were then assigned their specific stations and responsibilities within this new, ordered universe. The moon god Sin governed the night and the lunar cycle. Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, was associated with the planet Venus. Adad was the god of storms and rain. Every single natural phenomenon, from the annual flooding of the rivers that nourished their crops to the terrifying violence of a thunderstorm, was not a random act of nature but a deliberate action by a specific deity within this structured system. This is where the myth map moved from abstract cosmology to the very bedrock of daily life. This world, you provided an astonishingly effective framework for coping with a volatile and unpredictable environment. A devastating flood wasn't a meaningless tragedy. It was the result of a god's displeasure, a message that needed to be interpreted. An eclipse was a terrifying but ultimately predictable event where a demon was attempting to swallow the moon god, necessitating loud rituals to scare the predator away and restore order. This model transformed a frighteningly chaotic world into a knowable one. It provided a sense of order and predictability because if the gods were governing these phenomena, then they could potentially be influenced through the correct rituals, prayers, and offerings. This gave people a sense of agency amidst the uncertainty of agrarian life. As the esteemed scholar Thorkel Jacobsen observed, this cosmology profoundly gave meaning to human existence within a divinely orchestrated world. This wasn't just poetry, it was a practical reality that embedded itself into every fiber of Sumerian and Babylonian society. The calendar that dictated planting and harvesting was a religious document aligned with the movements of the celestial gods. The famous Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest written legal systems, was not presented as a human invention but as a gift from the sun god Shamash, the ultimate divine judge, thereby grounding earthly law in cosmic law. The ziggurats, those massive step temples that dotted the landscape, were not just places of worship, they were physical representations of the cosmic mountain, literal stairways connecting the earthly realm with the heavenly domain of the gods, allowing for communication between the human and the divine. By studying this ancient worldview, we witness perhaps the purest example of how myth maps serve a fundamental human need to transform the terror of the unknown into a manageable framework. The Mesopotamian model took the overwhelming vastness of the sky and the frightening power of nature and contained it within a structured, hierarchical, and comprehensible system. It turned fear into framework and chaos into cosmos, providing a narrative coherence that allowed one of the world's first great civilizations to not only survive but to thrive, laying down intellectual and spiritual foundations that would echo through the ages and shape the myth maps of cultures yet to come. Leaving behind the singular, structured universe of Mesopotamia, we now journey into a cosmological vision of almost fractal complexity, one that maps not just one world but countless layers of reality, all stacked upon each other and interwoven through an unbreakable web of cause and effect. This is the Hindu Cosmological Map of Lokas and Tolas, a breathtakingly intricate model of existence that serves as both a metaphysical blueprint of the universe and a precise moral compass for the soul's eternal journey. Where the Mesopotamian map was a flat disk under a solid dome, the Hindu conception is a vast, multi-dimensional architecture, a vertical cosmology that stretches from the highest heavenly abodes of pure consciousness down to the darkest, most constricted pits of ignorance and suffering. The fundamental structure of this cosmic map is built upon the concept of 14 primary planes, 7 higher worlds known as Lokas realms of increasing light, knowledge, and bliss, and 7 lower worlds called Tolas realms of increasing darkness, materialism, and bondage. But this is not a simple upstairs-downstairs arrangement of good and evil. It is a profound and nuanced spectrum of consciousness itself. At the very peak of this cosmic mountain sits Satya Loka, the realm of truth, the abode of the highest divine reality, Brahma, a plane of pure, undifferentiated existence and consciousness. Just below it are the blissful realms of Tapa Loka and Jhana Loka, inhabited by great sages and beings of immense spiritual attainment who exist in a state of near constant meditation and joy. Then we descend to Svarga Loka, perhaps the most famous of these higher planes, a heavenly realm of temporary, sensual pleasure. This is often compared to the paradise of other traditions, a place where souls enjoy the rewards of their good karma, indulging in celestial delights served by divine musicians and dancers, the Apsaras and Gandharvas. Yet the ancient texts are very clear, even Svarga is not the final goal. It is a pleasant stop, a vacation for the soul, but the karma that earned this reward will eventually be exhausted, and the soul will once again return to the cycle of rebirth. On the other end of this spectrum lie the Narokas, the myriad realms of punishment and purification. These are not realms of eternal damnation presided over by a vengeful deity, but rather karmic corrective facilities, meticulously designed chambers of consequence where the soul endures experiences that directly mirror the suffering it inflicted upon others during its earthly life. A soul that committed acts of greed might find itself in a Naraka where it is perpetually thirsty, surrounded by water it can never drink. One who was violent might endure corresponding pain until the karmic debt is fully paid. The purpose is not vengeance, but a brutal, precise form of education and purification. Once the sentence is served, the soul is cleansed and recycled back into the system, given another opportunity to learn and evolve. This entire elaborate structure is held together and given its profound meaning by 2 fundamental principles, karma and dharma. Karma is the immutable law of moral cause and effect, the spiritual physics that governs which loka or tola a soul will inhabit next. Every single thought, word, and action is a seed planted, and the quality of the realm one experiences is the inevitable fruit of that harvest. Dharma, then, is the user's manual for navigating this system. It is one's righteous duty, the ethical and moral path prescribed for one's particular station in life. By following one's dharma, by being a compassionate parent, a just ruler, an honest merchant, a devoted student, an individual generates positive karma, gradually propelling the soul upward through the lokas toward greater freedom and awareness. This is why the esteemed scholar of Hinduism, Wendy Doniger, so perfectly described this system as offering a vertical geography of the soul's journey. It is a literal map of spiritual ascent and descent. The goal, the ultimate destination marked on this map, is not to get stuck in any one loka, not even the blissful ones, but to achieve moksha, liberation from the entire cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Moksha is the final escape from the gravitational pull of karma itself, emerging back into the infinite ocean of Brahman, the ultimate reality. By internalizing this vast cosmological map, a Hindu practitioner could navigate the daily challenges of life with immense resilience and moral clarity. A personal failure or a stroke of bad luck was not a random, meaningless event, but a moment to reflect on one's karma and dharma. A moment of success was not just a cause for celebration, but a reminder to use that good fortune wisely, as a stepping stone for further spiritual progress. This myth map provided the ultimate context for human experience, transforming every moment into a meaningful step on a cosmic journey that spans lifetimes, fostering a profound sense of purpose, patience, and cosmic justice. While the Hindu cosmology charted a vast, multi-lifetime journey of the soul across countless realms, the ancient Greeks turned their myth mapping genius inward and downward, crafting a profoundly detailed and influential cartography of what awaited immediately after death. Their vision of the underworld, meticulously described by poets like Homer and Hesiod, was not a vague shadowland but a sharply defined, almost tangible territory with specific geography, landmarks, and rules, a myth map that served as the ultimate reflection on the meaning of a life well lived or squandered. To the Greek mind, the afterlife was not a matter of eternal reward or punishment in a distant heaven or hell, but a complex, stratified domain where one's earthly deeds directly shaped one's eternal experience, offering a powerful moral compass for the living. The journey to this realm began with the recognition of death itself, a passage marked by the necessity of proper funeral rites. Without the obol coin placed on the lips to pay the ferryman, a soul risked being trapped, restless and unsatisfied, on the wrong side of the first and most famous boundary, the river Akron, or more specifically, its tributary, the Styx. This was the river of hatred, an impassable body of dark water that formed the permanent border between the world of the living and the kingdom of the dead. The only way across was on the leaky boat of the grim, silent ferryman, Charon, who would only transport those who had received proper burial. This single, vivid detail embedded a crucial social value into the very geography of death, making the respectful treatment of the deceased not just a nicety, but a sacred duty with eternal consequences for the soul. Upon crossing, the soul would find itself in a vast, gloomy plain of asphodel flowers, a pale and ghostly meadow. This was the Asphodel Meadows, the default destination for the vast majority of humanity. Here, the shades of those who lived lives of neither great virtue nor glaring wickedness wandered in a bland, forgetful haze, experiencing neither joy nor torment but a perpetual, mediocre boredom. This was perhaps the most terrifying prospect for the glory-seeking Greek heroic mindset, not punishment but utter insignificance. It was an eternal retirement home for the morally average, a powerful incentive to strive for something more, to live a life that would be remembered. But for those who did distinguish themselves, the map offered two starkly different destinations. For the paragons of virtue, the great heroes and the chosen favorites of the gods, there was Elysium, also known as the Elysian Fields. Located at the very edges of the world, sometimes even separated from the main underworld, this was a place of perfect peace, soft breezes, and everlasting comfort. Here, heroes like Achilles and Menelaus enjoyed an eternity of leisure and athletic contests, a paradise reserved for those who had embodied the highest Greek ideals of courage, honor, and arete excellence. It was the ultimate reward, a retirement community for the best of the best. In brutal contrast, deep beneath the rest of the underworld lay Tartarus. This was not merely a section of Hades, it was a primordial pit, a dungeon as far below the earth is below the sky, sealed with gates of bronze and a surrounding wall of flaming rock. This was the divine maximum security prison, reserved for the most egregious sinners, those who had committed direct offenses against the gods themselves. Here, the map of the underworld became a gallery of divine justice and cautionary tales. The Titans were imprisoned here after their war with Zeus. King Sisyphus, who famously cheated death twice, was condemned to eternally push a boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down just before the summit. Tantalus, who killed his own son and served him to the gods to test their omniscience, stood in a pool of water that receded when he tried to drink, with fruit-laden branches swaying just out of his reach. These were not just punishments, they were perfect, poetic reflections of the crimes themselves, eternal reminders of the consequences of hubris, the arrogant overstepping of mortal boundaries. This intricate topography provided more than just stories. It provided a framework for the entire Greek philosophical and cultural engagement with mortality. When Odysseus ventures to the edge of the underworld in Homer's Odyssey, he isn't just on a spooky adventure, he is consulting a repository of wisdom. He speaks to the shade of the prophet Tyreus to learn his future, to his mother to understand the circumstances of her death, and to the hero Achilles, who delivers the heartbreaking line that he would rather be a poor farmer's slave on earth than a king among the dead. This scene perfectly illustrates how the underworld functioned as a place of knowledge and poignant truth, forcing a confrontation with the bittersweet nature of life itself. The great playwrights Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides constantly drew upon this myth map, using the fates of characters like Oedipus or Agamemnon to explore themes of fate, justice, and the inescapable consequences of human action. This is why the words of classicist Emily Vermeule ring so true. The Greek underworld did indeed provide a geography for the imagination. It gave tangible form to the abstract terror of death, structuring it into a landscape that could be navigated, understood, and even challenged. It was a shared cultural toolkit that every Greek could access, a set of stories and symbols that helped them process grief, contemplate their own choices, and ultimately find a measure of meaning in the face of the inevitable. It taught that our actions echo in eternity, not necessarily in a grand cosmic judgment, but in the very quality of the shadow life we are fated to lead, making the journey to the underworld the most important trip a Greek never wanted to take. From the intricate and stratified Greek underworld, we now turn to a myth map of breathtaking simplicity and holistic unity, one that finds profound meaning not in layers of punishment and reward, but in the perfect, endless circle of existence itself. This is the Native American medicine wheel, a powerful symbol and spiritual tool used by numerous Plains tribes, including the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Blackfoot. Unlike a map that charts a linear journey from point A to point B, the medicine wheel is a mandala of life, a circular representation of the universe that teaches everything is connected, everything is cyclical, and everything exists in a state of dynamic, sacred balance. It is a map that does not direct you to a destination, but rather shows you how to be fully present at the center of your own existence, in harmony with all creation. At its most fundamental level, the medicine wheel is a circle divided into 4 quadrants by a cross, each point aligned with one of the 4 cardinal directions. But this simple geometry is a gateway to an entire cosmology. Each direction is a rich tapestry of correspondences, a nexus of meaning that ties the outer world to the inner self. The east, where the sun rises, is universally associated with beginnings, illumination, and renewal. It is the direction of spring, of the element of air, of the spiritual energy of enlightenment, and the innocence of childhood. The south represents the warmth of summer, the element of fire, and the time of rapid growth, passion, and adolescence, a period of building relationships and exploring the world with trust. Moving to the west, we find the place of the setting sun, the season of autumn, and the element of water. This is the direction of introspection, of looking within, of adulthood, and the harvest of wisdom from life's experiences. Finally, the north is the realm of winter, of the element of earth, of wisdom, purity, and the elders. It is a time for quiet contemplation, for receiving the hard-earned knowledge that comes from a long life, and for understanding the great mysteries of existence. This elegant system is far more than a static chart. It is an active, living framework for navigating every aspect of life. In a practical sense, many medicine wheels were, and are, physical constructions, circles of stones laid out on the earth, with lines of rocks radiating from a central point to each of the 4 directions. These were not monuments to be looked at, but tools to be used. A community might gather within the wheel to make important decisions, ensuring that each perspective, the new vision of the East, the passionate growth of the South, the deep introspection of the West, and the wise counsel of the North was respectfully considered before reaching a consensus. This practice embedded the principle of balance directly into governance and social harmony. An individual might sit in the wheel for prayer or meditation, perhaps seeking guidance by facing a particular direction that corresponded to the challenge they were facing. A healing ceremony would call upon the powers and medicines associated with all 4 directions to restore balance to a person who was physically, emotionally, or spiritually unwell. This is where the concept of the medicine wheel as a map truly shines. The word medicine in this context does not simply mean a herbal remedy. It refers to spiritual power, to the innate energy and essence of all things. The wheel maps the location of these different medicines and shows how they interact. True health in this worldview is not the absence of disease, but the presence of balance among all these forces. A person who is too much in the south, all fire and passion without reflection, might be impulsive and burn out. A person stuck in the west, all introspection and water, might become isolated and sad. The wheel teaches that to be whole, one must integrate the lessons of all 4 directions. To have the clarity of the east, the passion of the south, the depth of the west, and the wisdom of the north. It is a guide for personal development, a compass for becoming a complete human being. This profound depth is why author Jaime Storm so beautifully described the medicine wheel as a mirror for the human mind. Gazing upon its structure is an act of self-reflection. The 4 directions are not just out there in the world, they are within us. We all have moments of new beginning east, energetic growth south, thoughtful introspection west, and quiet wisdom north. The wheel shows us that these are not separate parts but interconnected aspects of a single, balanced whole. It maps the inner landscape of the human psyche with the same clarity. It maps the cycles of the seasons and the architecture of the cosmos. This elegant simplicity is its greatest genius, offering a versatile framework that can help anyone understand the flow of time, the nature of space, and the multifaceted layers of their own identity. In a world that often feels fragmented and disconnected, the enduring power of this symbolic thinking reminds us that we are not separate from the universe, but a living, breathing part of its beautiful circular dance. Leaving behind the holistic circle of the medicine wheel, we now turn to a myth map that is at once a stunning work of art, a profound psychological diagnosis, and a starkly honest roadmap out of the very trap of existence itself. This is the Buddhist Wheel of Life, or Bhavachakra, an intricate and often terrifying Thangka painting that has been used for over 2,000 years as the ultimate visual guide to understanding why we suffer and how we can finally be free. Imagine a diagram so potent and clear that a single glance could reveal the entire mechanics of your own mind, the hidden forces that drive your every action, and the inevitable consequences that await you in this life and the next. This is not a map of external lands, but an internal cartography of the human condition, a mirror held up to the soul that reveals both the prison and the key. At first glance, the wheel is a mesmerizing and complex image, but its structure is brilliantly systematic. The entire wheel is held in the clutches of a monstrous figure, often Yama, the god of death. This is the first and most crucial lesson. The entire cycle of existence, known as samsara, is impermanent and ultimately under the dominion of death and suffering. Within his grasp, the wheel is divided into several concentric rings that tell a layered story. The very hub at the center contains the root causes of all our problems, depicted as three animals: a pig, a rooster, and a snake. They are shown chasing each other in an endless, blind circle, each one biting the tail of the next. The pig represents ignorance, not a lack of book smarts, but a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality, a deep delusion about who we are and how things exist. This ignorance gives birth to the rooster, symbolizing attachment and greed, the desperate clinging to things we believe will make us happy. And from that attachment arises the snake, representing aversion and hatred, the equally powerful pushing away of things we find unpleasant. These three poisons are the engine of the entire wheel, the fuel that keeps it spinning life after life after life. Radiating out from this toxic core are the next layers, illustrating the karmic consequences of these mental states. One ring shows figures ascending on a bright path, representing the positive karma generated by virtuous actions like generosity and kindness. Another shows figures falling down a dark path, symbolizing the negative karma born from harmful actions like cruelty and deceit. This is the law of moral cause and effect in visual form, a direct and immediate feedback loop showing that our thoughts and actions are never neutral. They are seeds that inevitably bear fruit, propelling us upward or downward on the wheel. The largest and most vivid section of the wheel is its 6 distinct realms, which represent the 6 possible types of existence a being can be reborn into based entirely on their karma. These are not physical places one travels to, but psychological states we inhabit, both in between lives and profoundly, right here in our daily experience. At the very top is the God realm, a place of immense pleasure, power, and longevity. It seems like paradise, but it is a trap of complacency. The gods are so intoxicated by their bliss that they forget to practice spirituality, and when their good karma finally runs out, they experience a devastating fall, often into a lower realm. Just below it is the jealous god realm, a state of constant competition, paranoia, and warfare. These beings have immense power and luxury, but are consumed by envy and a need to defend their status, living in a perpetual state of angst and conflict. Then there is the hungry ghost realm, one of the most haunting images on the wheel. These beings have tiny mouths and huge, distended bellies, forever starving and thirsty but utterly incapable of finding satisfaction. This is a powerful portrait of addiction and insatiable craving, where no matter how much one consumes, the inner void can never be filled. The animal realm represents a state of instinct, fear, and stupor. Life here is dominated by the base drives for survival, eating, and sleeping, with little capacity for introspection, spiritual growth, or empathy. It is an existence of prey and predator. Then there is the Hell Realm, which depicts beings frozen in ice or burning in fire, subjected to relentless, excruciating torment. This is not a punishment from an external god, but the direct, experiential result of extreme hatred, cruelty, and violence. It is the ultimate manifestation of the mind's own capacity for self-inflicted agony. And finally, there is the human realm. We are situated right in the middle of the wheel, and this is presented as the most precious and fortunate rebirth of all. Why? Because our lives contain just the right mixture of pleasure and pain. We experience enough suffering to be motivated to seek a way out, but we also have enough freedom, intelligence, and opportunity to actually understand the teachings and practice the path to liberation. Our realm is the perfect workshop for enlightenment, yet the most crucial part of the entire map is found outside the wheel itself. In every traditional depiction, the figure of the Buddha stands in the upper corner, pointing not to any of the 6 realms, but to an 8th, final destination that is off the map entirely, nirvana. He is pointing the way out. His finger directs the gaze toward the moon, symbolizing the luminous, unconditioned state beyond all cycles of birth and death. This is the ultimate purpose of the Wheel of Life. It is not meant to frighten us into submission, but to diagnose our condition with such clarity that we are inspired to seek the cure. It is, as the renowned scholar Robert Thurman so aptly described it, a diagnostic chart for the human condition. A doctor shows a patient an X-ray to make the invisible illness visible so that a treatment plan can be followed. The wheel is that X-ray for the soul. By contemplating it, a Buddhist is encouraged to engage in deep self-awareness, to identify which of the 3 poisons is currently active in their mind, to recognize which realm they are psychologically inhabiting in any given moment, be it the pride of a god, the jealousy of a demigod, the craving of a hungry ghost, or the ignorance of an animal. This awareness creates a moment of choice. Instead of being unconsciously driven by these forces, one can begin to make mindful decisions that generate the karma for liberation, practicing generosity to counteract greed, cultivating compassion to dissolve hatred, and developing wisdom to pierce through ignorance. This myth map's genius is its profound practicality. It takes the immensely complex philosophy of dependent origination, the 12-linked chain of cause and effect that perpetuates suffering, and translates it into a single, unforgettable image that can be understood by anyone, from a learned monk to a humble farmer. It demonstrates with terrifying and beautiful clarity that we are not helpless victims of fate or the whims of gods. We are the architects of our own experience, and we hold the power to stop building the prison of samsara. The Wheel of Life does not just describe a cycle, it provides the operating instructions for dismantling it, guiding each individual step by step, moment by moment, toward the ultimate liberation that awaits when the wheel finally, blessedly, comes to a stop. Emerging from the introspective psychological landscapes of the Buddhist Wheel of Life, we now encounter a myth map of staggering physical presence and cosmic ambition, one that carved its vision of reality not on a scroll, but onto a 24-ton slab of basalt. This is the Aztec Sunstone, often mistakenly called the Calendar Stone, a monumental sculpture that is less an artifact and more a captured piece of the universe itself, a portable cosmos that mapped the terrifying, beautiful, and relentless mechanics of existence according to the Aztec worldview. Discovered buried beneath the Zocalo in Mexico City, this 12-foot-wide disc is not a timekeeping device in any simple sense. It is a profound and complex statement on the nature of time, the fragility of the world, and the sacred duty of humanity to hold the cosmos together through faith, will, and sacrifice. At the very heart of this stone cosmos, staring out with an almost hypnotic intensity, is the face of the sun god Tanatia. His tongue is a ritual flint knife protruding sharply, a visceral and unmistakable symbol of the nourishment he requires, human blood and human hearts. This central image sets the tone for the entire map. For the Aztecs, the universe was not a stable, permanent gift from a benevolent creator. It was a precarious, dynamic achievement, a cosmic engine that required the most precious fuel imaginable to keep it from stalling and collapsing into absolute darkness. The sun itself did not rise out of mere habit. It rose because the gods had sacrificed themselves to set it in motion at the dawn of the fifth sun, and it continued its journey only through continued sacrifice from humanity. This was the foundational contract of existence, and the sunstone is its most detailed and terrifying blueprint. Encircling Tanatia are 4 square panels, each representing one of the 4 previous eras, or suns, that preceded the current one. This is a crucial part of the map, for it teaches a history of cosmic catastrophe. Each previous world was destroyed in a cataclysmic event: jaguars, hurricanes, volcanic fire, and floods, because the beings who inhabited them failed in their duties or displeased the gods. The Nahui Oslotl jaguar sun was destroyed by jaguars. The Nahui Eheketl wind sun was swept away by hurricanes. The Nahui Quiahuatl rain sun was consumed by a rain of fire, and the Nahui Atl water sun ended in a great flood. This sequential history of annihilation is not just a myth, it is a warning. It maps a pattern of divine expectation and consequence, making it clear that the current world, the Nahui Olan movement sun, is also fragile and destined to end in a final, colossal earthquake. This knowledge instilled a profound and urgent sense of purpose. The world was not forever, and its continuation hinged directly on human action. Radiating out from this central history is the map of the present, an intricate series of rings encoding the Aztec understanding of time and space. A band of the 20-day signs of the sacred calendar, the Tonalpohualli, forms a critical inner circle. This 260-day cycle was not for planting crops. It was a divinatory map used by priests to determine the fate of newborns, the auspiciousness of dates for battles or ceremonies, and the overall tone of a period. Each day was governed by a combination of a number and a sign, creating a complex, endlessly repeating cycle of influences that shaped every aspect of life. This ring presents time not as a blank slate, but as a pre-charted territory of spiritual forces, a calendar of destiny that needed to be carefully navigated. Beyond this lies another ring adorned with glyphs representing the stars and the firmament, placing the earthly cycles within a broader celestial context. The entire disk is then framed by 2 massive fire serpents, Zucotl, whose bodies meet at the bottom. These are not mere decorative borders, they are powerful symbols of time itself, of the cyclical nature of the years. Their tails are at the top and their heads meet at the base, perhaps symbolizing the meeting of the past and future in the eternal present. Clutched in the jaws of each serpent is a human face, a further, grim reminder of the sacrificial cost of maintaining the cosmic order. Every element, from the central god to the outermost serpents, is interconnected, each part reinforcing the central theme. The cosmos is a delicate balance of opposing forces, and humanity is the pivotal actor responsible for maintaining that balance through ritual and offering. This is why historian David Carrasco so accurately describes the Sun Stone as a map of cosmic order. It visually links the actions of the state, the organization of wars to capture sacrificial victims, the precise scheduling of ceremonies, the agricultural cycles tied to the solar year, directly to the movement of the heavens and the very survival of the world. A successful harvest was not just good farming, it was evidence that the sacrifices had been sufficient to please Tlaloc, the rain god. A military victory was a chance to provide the necessary nourishment for Tanatia. The political ruler, the Hui Tlatoni, was not just a king, he was the high priest of the world, the chief engineer of the cosmic engine. This myth map, therefore, provided the ultimate justification for the Aztec way of life, from its stunning artistic achievements to its most brutal practices. It instilled an incredible sense of collective identity and responsibility. Every citizen, from the highest priest to the lowest farmer, was a participant in a divine, cosmic drama, and the survival of everything they knew depended on their unwavering commitment to their role. The Sunstone is a masterful blend of precise astronomical observation and deep mythological narrative, a testament to a civilization that looked at the heavens and saw not indifferent stars, but a sacred, hungry, and beautiful machine that they alone were chosen to keep in motion. From the solid, sun-warmed stone of the Aztec cosmos, we now drift into a world where the boundaries are soft, the light is hazy, and the very air seems to shimmer with possibility. This is the Celtic Otherworld, a myth map that charts not a single fixed location, but a parallel dimension of enchantment that lies just a breath away from our own, accessible through the most subtle of portals, a sudden bank of mist on a familiar hillside, the still, dark waters of a lonely lake, or the entrance to an ancient, grass-covered burial mound known as a Shia. Unlike the structured hierarchies of the Norse or the Egyptians, the Celtic map is one of fluidity and mystery, a realm where time behaves differently, youth is eternal, and magic is the fundamental law of nature. It reflects a world, not of separation between the human and the divine, but of an intimate, constant closeness, where the sacred is woven into the very fabric of the land. This otherworld was not a single, uniform place, but a spectrum of wondrous domains, each with its own character. There was Tur Na and Og, the land of the young, a radiant island far to the west where pain, sickness, and old age were unknown, and joy was the constant state of being. There was Mag Mell, the plain of honey, a paradisal plain of everlasting feast and pleasure. But there were also more ominous aspects, like the Shia mounds themselves, which were believed to be the homes of the Aus Shi, the powerful and often capricious fairy folk who could be benevolent patrons or terrifying adversaries depending on how they were approached. This wasn't a simple heaven or hell. It was a complex, alternate reality operating on its own logic, one that could be both breathtakingly beautiful and unnervingly dangerous. The key to navigating it was not a spell or a prayer book, but a state of being, often requiring an invitation, a specific state of mind, or an act of great courage or purity to cross over. The most famous guide to this territory is the poignant tale of Oisin, son of the legendary warrior Fionn mac Cumhaill. While hunting with his companions, Oisin encounters Niamh of the golden hair, a princess from Tur Na and Og who arrives on a magical white horse. She invites him to come with her to her land, a place of endless beauty and youth. He agrees, and they ride across the sea to this paradise where they live in bliss for what feels to Oisin like 3 joyful years. But a homesickness eventually grips him, and he wishes to return to Ireland to see his father and his fellow Fianna warriors. Niamh reluctantly agrees but gives him one grave warning. He must not dismount from the magical horse and let his feet touch the soil of the mortal world. Upon returning, Oisin is devastated to find that not 3 years but 300 years have passed in Ireland. His father, his friends, all are long dead, and their stories have faded into legend. While trying to help some men move a heavy stone, his girth breaks and he falls from the saddle. The moment his aged body touches the ground, the centuries he had evaded in Tur Na en Og crash down upon him instantly, transforming him into a frail, ancient man. The myth map here delivers its profound lesson with devastating clarity. The choices we make have irreversible consequences, and the pursuit of one world often means the irrevocable loss of another. Oisin's story is a map of longing, of the bittersweet tension between adventure and home, and the immutable law that all choices, even those made for love, carry a cost. This map did more than just tell captivating stories. It fundamentally shaped the Celtic perception of the physical world. As folklorist Proinsias Mac Connor observed, the Otherworld provided a spatial dimension to Celtic spirituality. Every hill, forest, and spring was potentially a thin place, a doorway. This belief fostered a deep and abiding animism, a conviction that the natural world was not a collection of resources to be exploited, but a living, sentient community of beings deserving of respect. Leaving offerings at a sacred well, asking permission before cutting a tree, or avoiding certain paths out of respect for the owl's she, these were not superstitions, but practical applications of the myth map. It was a code of conduct for existing in a world alive with invisible presences. This encouraged a sense of profound wonder and ecological reverence, long before such concepts had names. The landscape itself was the scripture, and the stories were its annotations, teaching people to move through their environment with awareness, humility, and a sense of sacred connection. By exploring the Celtic Otherworld, we see the incredible flexibility of the myth map concept. It doesn't need to be a rigid diagram or a painted scroll. It can be an ethereal, ever-shifting landscape of story and suggestion. This map expanded the human imagination beyond the literal and the immediate, fostering a worldview where the mundane and the miraculous weren't opposing ideas, but intertwined layers of a single, richer reality. It taught that adventure beckoned from just beyond the next misty hill, that magic was a possibility in the everyday, and that the deepest truths about loyalty, choice, and the passage of time could be found in the haunting, beautiful, and cautionary tales of those who dared to cross over. While the Celtic Otherworld mapped a landscape of magic and mystery just beyond the veil of our own, the Chinese tradition developed a myth map of astonishing precision and practical application, one designed not to explore distant realms but to perfectly align our immediate surroundings with the fundamental energies of the universe. This is the art and science of Feng Shui, and its primary tool is the Luopan, a compass so much more than a simple directional device. It is an intricate cosmological calculator, a symbolic representation of the entire cosmos compacted into a handheld instrument designed to map the invisible currents of life force or Chi that flow through the land, our homes, and our very bodies. Where other maps guided journeys to the afterlife or the stars, the Luopan was meant to guide the placement of your bed, the orientation of your city, and the design of your tomb, all in the pursuit of one ultimate goal: harmony. At first glance, a traditional Luopan is a dazzling and complex object. A central magnetic needle sits within a series of concentric rings, each one inscribed with a different set of characters, symbols, and calibrations. These rings are not arbitrary, they are a layered encyclopedia of cosmic principles. The most fundamental ring displays the 8 trigrams of the Bogwa, which represent the core processes of nature, from the creative energy of heaven to the receptive stillness of earth. Another ring details the 5 elemental phases of transformation: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, illustrating how these forces interact in cycles of creation and destruction. Further rings incorporate the 24 directions, celestial stems, earthly branches, and constellations from the Chinese astronomical tradition. To use the Luopan is not simply to find north, it is to take a multidimensional reading of a location's spiritual, energetic, and symbolic relationship to the cosmos. A master practitioner, a Feng Shui Shifu, would take precise measurements at a site, noting how the needle aligned with different rings, interpreting the combinations of symbols to diagnose the quality of Kai, whether it was stagnant or flowing, benevolent or hostile, and then prescribe adjustments to correct the flow. This practice transformed the art of placement into a sacred act. When planning a city like ancient Beijing, Feng Shui masters would use the Luopan to orient the entire grid to the protective mountains in the north and the nourishing waters in the south, creating a microcosm of the ideal cosmic order. The placement of the forbidden city, the thickness of its walls, and the angles of its roofs were all determined by these principles, designed to gather and retain benevolent Kai to ensure the health and longevity of the empire. On a much smaller scale, a family building a home would consult a master to choose the most auspicious site, one that was protected at the back by a black turtle hill and open at the front to a red phoenix view, with water flowing in a harmonious pattern to attract prosperity. Even the arrangement of furniture inside followed this mapped logic. The head of a bed might be positioned to align with personal auspicious directions calculated from one's birth date, ensuring restorative sleep and personal vitality. This incredible synthesis of the observable and the mystical is why historian Richard J. Smith so perfectly described Feng Shui as a cartography of invisible forces. It maps what cannot be seen but is deeply felt: the sense of peace in a well-proportioned room, the unease in a cluttered and dark corridor, the vitality of a community living in a well-designed space. It blended empirical observation, noting how wind and water actually shaped a landscape, with a rich mythological understanding of the world as a living, breathing entity. Dragons and tigers were not mere legends. They were symbolic shorthand for the specific energetic qualities of landforms. A winding river was not just a water source, it was the visible path of the Earth's dragon veins, carrying Kai that could be harnessed for human benefit. By internalizing the map provided by the Luopan, individuals could make daily decisions that actively fostered harmony between the human world and the natural order. This enduring practice, which remains deeply influential across East Asia and beyond, reveals a universal human desire that transcends culture, the profound yearning to live in sync with the larger patterns of the cosmos. It is the belief that we are not separate from our environment, but in constant dialogue with it, and that by understanding the hidden map of energy that connects everything, we can arrange our lives to attract health, prosperity, and balance, creating a small piece of heaven right here on Earth. After navigating the invisible energetic currents of the Chinese Luopan, we plunge into a myth map of profound darkness and triumphant rebirth, one that charts the very origin of the world and the defiant spirit of humanity against impossible odds. This is the creation narrative of the Mayan Popol Vuh, a sprawling epic that is far more than a simple collection of stories. It is the foundational charter of Mayan consciousness, an intricate guide to the layered cosmos, and a stirring moral drama that maps the path from primordial silence to the resilient heart of human community. Often called the Mayan Bible, the Popol Vuh is a breathtakingly comprehensive myth map detailing the actions of gods, the terrifying geography of the underworld, and the heroic trials that ultimately define the purpose and potential of human life itself. The journey begins not with light, but with a vast, empty stillness. The opening lines of the Popol Vuh paint a picture of a primordial sea under a blank sky, a world of utter potential where the only beings are the sovereign, plumed serpent Gukumats and the heart of the sky, Huracan, the god of storm and whirlwind. Their first act of creation is not to build mountains or valleys, but to speak the word earth. This establishes a central theme of the entire map, the generative power of language and divine breath. But their initial attempts to create beings to praise them are disastrous failures. They fashion animals, but creatures that can only squawk and chatter cannot speak their names. They mold figures from mud, but these beings are soft, dissolve in water, and possess no true understanding. This series of failed creations is a crucial part of the map, illustrating that the gods sought not just obedient servants, but conscious, articulate partners in the ongoing work of sustaining the cosmos. The narrative then descends into one of the most vivid and terrifying regions of any myth map, the underworld of Xibalba, which translates ominously to place of fright. This is not a passive realm of shadows, but an active, malevolent entity, a labyrinthine court ruled by twisted, decay-obsessed lords with names like One Death and Seven Death, and Scab Stripper and Blood Gatherer. Xibalba is a masterclass in psychological and physical terror, mapped with deadly challenges designed to humiliate and destroy: the Dark House, the Razor House, the Cold House, and the Bat House. It is here that the first set of heroes, the arrogant twins 1 Hunahpu and 7 Hunahpu, meet their gruesome end, decapitated on a ball court and their heads placed in a calabash tree as a warning. This defeat establishes the rules of the game. Arrogance and carelessness are fatal in the face of the underworld's cunning. Yet, from this defeat springs the central drama of the entire epic. The severed head of 1 Hunahpu spits into the hand of a daughter of a Xibalban lord, miraculously impregnating her with the next generation of heroes, the legendary hero twins Hunahpu and Xbalanque. The journey of the hero twins is the absolute core of this myth map, a detailed guide to overcoming adversity through intelligence, teamwork, and humility. Unlike their father and uncle, they are not arrogant. They are clever, patient, and resilient. They are summoned to Xibalba to face the same deadly games, but they outwit the lords at every turn. They send a mosquito ahead to learn the true names of the lords, stripping them of their power of anonymity. They survive the Dark House by keeping their torches unlit, pretending to be burned, and then miraculously relighting them. They turn the deadly ball game against their opponents, using their cunning to win. Their ultimate victory comes not through brute force, but through a breathtaking act of theatrical deception. They allow themselves to be killed and ground into bone dust, only to be resurrected as miraculous dancing figures who then perform for the lords of Xibalba. In their final act, they sacrifice one of the Xibalban lords and bring him back to life, dazzling the others, who then beg to be sacrificed themselves in the hope of receiving the same gift. The twins, of course, leave them dead, finally breaking the power of the underworld. This entire saga maps a precise strategy for dealing with life's most profound challenges. Use your wits, trust in your brother, and understand that true power often lies in appearing weak before you strike. With the lords of Xibalba defeated, the twins ascend to the sky to become the sun and the moon, bringing light and order to the world for the first time. This clears the way for the final, successful creation of humanity. The gods gather maize from the sacred mountain of sustenance, and from this precious yellow and white corn dough, they fashion the first 4 true men and women. These beings possess vision and understanding so profound that they can see everything in the universe at once. Fearing their power, the gods cloud their vision, giving them a limited human perspective. This is not a punishment, but the final act of creation that defines the human condition. We are made of sacred, nourishing substance, but our understanding is intentionally limited. requiring us to seek knowledge, to worship, and to find our way through faith and perseverance. This completed humanity is then given its purpose, to be the stewards of the world, to worship the gods, and to perpetuate the cycles of time through ritual and calendar observance. This is why anthropologist Dennis Tedlock so accurately called the Popol Vuh a roadmap for cultural identity. It was the ultimate guide for Mayan society. The ball game was not just a sport, it was a reenactment of the hero twins' struggle against the lords of death. The practice of royal bloodletting, where a ruler would draw blood from their tongue or genitals to commune with ancestors, was a direct imitation of the sacrifices made by the gods and the twins to bring the world into being. The complex Mayan calendar, which tracked vast cycles of time, reflected the epic's central theme of destruction and renewal, giving people a framework to understand periods of crisis as necessary precursors to a new beginning. The story taught that the world was not given to humanity perfect and complete. It was won through ingenuity and sacrifice, and it required constant vigilance and participation to maintain. This myth map provided an unshakable sense of resilience, a deep well of hope that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, be it drought, war, or famine, the lessons of the hero twins could guide a community through to the other side, just as the sun and moon rise each day after their nightly journey through the terrors of the underworld. Shifting our focus from the collective dramas of Mayan creation, we now turn inward to a myth map of exquisite spiritual architecture, one that charts not the outer cosmos but the inner dynamics of the divine itself. This is the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, a stunningly elegant diagram that has served for centuries as the central organizing principle of Jewish mysticism. Imagine a blueprint for reality, a schematic of the soul, and a user's manual for personal transformation, all condensed into a single image of 10 circles, or sephirot, connected by 22 pathways. This is not a map to a physical place, but a guide to the process of creation itself and the corresponding journey the human soul can take back toward its source. It is a profound synthesis of cosmology, psychology, and theology, offering a structured path from the confusion of the material world to the luminous unity of the divine. At the heart of this system are the 10 sephirot, each one a distinct emanation or attribute through which the infinite, unknowable Godhead, known as Ein Sof, the Endless One, reveals itself and continuously creates the universe. They are not gods themselves, but rather like different facets of a single brilliant diamond, each refracting the divine light in a unique way. The tree is typically arranged in 3 columns, representing different modes of energy, and 3 horizontal tiers, representing ascending levels of consciousness. At the very top rests Keter, the crown. This is the first stirring of will within the infinite, the pure potential and divine intent that precedes all existence. It is the realm of pure being, so close to the Ein Sof that it is often described as nothingness, the sublime origin point of everything. From this supreme crown flows the energy of creation down the tree, moving through sephirot that represent the balance of force and form, such as Chokmah, wisdom, the flash of masculine, active inspiration, and Binah, understanding, the receptive, feminine vessel that gives that inspiration structure and depth. This divine couple gives birth to the central sephirah of Tiferet, beauty, which acts as the heart of the entire tree, the mediating principle that balances mercy and severity, and represents the divine compassion that makes the world possible. The lower sephirot translate these lofty principles into the dynamics of our everyday experience. Cheesed loving kindness is the expansive, generous force of unconditional love, while its opposite on the tree, Jevura, severity, is the necessary power of judgment, restraint, and discipline. Their balance creates Tiferet, Then we have Netzach eternity, the driving force of emotion, passion, and endurance, and its counterpart Hod splendor, the realm of intellect, logic, and communication. Their synthesis is found in Yesod foundation, which acts as a filter, gathering all the energies from the Sephiroth above and channeling them into the final vessel, Malkuth kingdom. Malkuth is the physical world we inhabit, the dense, material plane where the divine light is at its most concealed. It is both the completion of the creative process and the starting point for the human journey of return. The entire structure is a perfect map of emanation, showing how the boundless, abstract divine condenses itself, step by step, into the tangible reality of a rock, a tree, or a human being. This is where the map becomes intensely personal and practical. The 22 paths that connect the Sephiroth correspond to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, each one a specific channel of energy and consciousness. For a Kabbalist, the spiritual journey is one of ascending this tree, of consciously traveling these paths inward and upward to rectify the soul and achieve Dvekut, or cleaving to God. This is not a physical climb but an inner alchemy of self-refinement. For instance, a person who feels stuck in the material concerns of Malkuth might work to strengthen their connection to Yesod, the foundation, by examining their dreams and subconscious patterns. Someone struggling with harsh self-judgment might seek to balance the severity of Jevura by invoking the flowing loving kindness of Chizd. Each Sephira is a mirror for a part of the human psyche. The unchecked power of Jevura without the balance of Chizd leads to cruelty and destruction. Unbridled Chizd without Jevura leads to indulgence and a lack of boundaries. The entire spiritual path, as mapped by the tree, is one of achieving equilibrium within oneself, of balancing the inner forces to become a clear and proper vessel for the divine light to shine through into the world. This profound integration of the cosmic and the psychological is why the great scholar of Jewish mysticism, Gershom Scholem, so perfectly described the Tree of Life as providing a symbolic geography of the soul's ascent. It is a cartography of consciousness itself. By meditating on the attributes, visualizing the paths, and studying the complex relationships between the Sephiroth, a practitioner engages in a deep process of self-knowledge and ethical refinement. Understanding the nature of divine judgment, Jevura, inspires one to practice righteous judgment in their own life. Contemplating divine compassion, Tiferet cultivates empathy and mercy toward others. This myth map demonstrates with breathtaking clarity how the most abstract spiritual concepts can be structured into a tangible, practical guide for daily living. It influenced not only prayer and meditation, but also provided a mystical framework for interpreting scripture, for understanding history, and for engaging in every action with a sense of its deeper, cosmic significance. The Tree of Life stands as a timeless testament to the human desire to find a pattern in the divine, to see the architecture of the sacred, and to have a map for the most important journey any of us can ever take, the journey home to our own highest self. Leaving behind the intricate symbolic architecture of the Kabbalistic tree, we now set our sights on the greatest expanse of blue our planet has to offer, to witness a myth map of breathtaking practicality and poetic beauty, one that was not drawn on any surface but memorized in the mind, sung in chants, and read in the heavens themselves. This is the Polynesian star compass, a celestial navigation system so precise and sophisticated that it enabled the deliberate exploration and settlement of the vast Pacific Ocean, an area larger than all the Earth's landmasses combined, all without the use of written charts, magnetic compasses, or any instruments beyond the human senses. This was not mere wayfinding. It was a high art form, a sacred science where the sky was a chart, the stars were named guides, and every wave and bird held a meaning, all woven into a living tapestry of story, genealogy, and divine connection. To understand the genius of this system, we must first erase our modern conception of a map as a static object. For the Polynesian voyagers, the map was a dynamic, mental construct. A 360-degree compass rose oriented around the rising and setting points of key stars. A master navigator, or PWO, would mentally divide the horizon into 32 houses, much like the points on a mariner's compass. But these houses were not defined by abstract directions like north or south. They were defined by the precise location where a specific star would rise and set. The star Hokulea, which we know as Arcturus, was one such crucial beacon. For Hawaiian navigators, its zenith directly over the Hawaiian Islands made it a celestial pillar, a sure sign that you were home. But this star was far more than a celestial GPS point. Its name means Star of Joy, and it is intricately linked to the Hawaiian creation chant, the Kumulipo, embodying the lineage of the chiefs and the generative power of the universe. To follow Hokulea was not just to follow a light, it was to follow a story, to be guided by the wisdom of the ancestors who had first navigated these waters millennia before. This deep interweaving of the practical and the mythological was the very engine of this navigation. The star compass was not a separate tool from the oral traditions, it was the physical expression of them. Each star, each constellation carried a name, a personality, and a narrative. In Maori tradition, the constellation of Orion is not a hunter but the great ancestor and navigator, Tamareti, who sailed his canoe across the black lake of the night sky, scattering bright pebbles to create the Milky Way. The Pleiades, or Matariki, mark the Maori New Year, a time of remembrance, celebration, and planting, directly linking the celestial event to the cycles of life on Earth. A navigator didn't just memorize star paths, they learned the stories of the gods and ancestors those stars represented. This mythological layer served a crucial mnemonic purpose, transforming dry astronomical data into a memorable, compelling narrative structure. Knowing that a certain star was the eye of a watchful god who guided fishermen home made its position impossible to forget. The ocean itself was read as a text. The specific pattern of swells refracted around islands hundreds of miles away told a story of distant land. The flight paths of certain birds at dusk revealed the direction to land just beyond the horizon. The presence of specific clouds or the taste of the air all contributed to the narrative the navigator was constantly interpreting. This holistic knowledge was preserved and passed down through generations in sophisticated chants and oral traditions. These were not simple songs, they were dense, technical manuals encoded in poetry. Chants listed star paths for voyages between specific islands, described the feel of particular ocean swells, and catalogued the seasonal behaviors of marine life. The apprentice navigator would spend years, often decades, learning these chants by heart, not just reciting the words but internalizing the rhythm, the imagery, and the deeper knowledge they contained. They learned to feel the motion of the canoe beneath them, to maintain their mental star compass even when the sky was obscured by clouds by reading the direction of the waves. This was a science of the senses, a total immersion in the environment that required a state of constant, focused awareness. The goal was to hold the image of your destination island fixed in your mind while simultaneously holding your precise position on the ocean, a feat of memory and concentration almost unimaginable today. The revival of this ancient art in the 1970s, led by the Polynesian Voyaging Society and navigators like the legendary Maupiailug from Micronesia and Hawaii's Nainoa Thompson, proved its astonishing accuracy beyond any doubt. The voyage of the double-hulled canoe Hokulea from Hawaii to Tahiti and back in 1976 guided solely by these traditional methods, was a watershed moment that stunned the modern world and reignited cultural pride across Polynesia. Nainoa Thompson, who later became the first Hawaiian in centuries to master this art, perfectly described it as a fusion of science and story. He speaks of the moment when the theoretical knowledge from the chants becomes a lived reality, when you see the star you've been waiting for rise exactly from the house it was supposed to, a moment of profound connection that is both a scientific validation and a spiritual epiphany. This approach transformed the practical skill of navigation into a spiritual practice, a way of being in the world that fostered a relationship of deep respect and intimate dialogue with the natural world. It was a map that taught you that you were not a conqueror of the ocean, but a participant within a vast, living system, guided by the wisdom of the stars and the courage of your ancestors. The longevity and sophistication of this oral cartography stand as a timeless testament to the power of the human mind and the enduring truth that the most accurate maps are often those that chart not just the coordinates of a place, but the meaning of the journey itself. After navigating the vast Pacific guided by the stories written in the stars, we now plunge into one of the most radical and intellectually daring myth maps ever conceived, a vision of reality that turns the conventional world upside down and inside out. This is the Gnostic Cosmological Map of the Pleroma and the Archons, a breathtakingly complex and subversive blueprint for the universe that offered its followers not just a path to enlightenment, but a secret key to escape from a prison they didn't even know they were in. Found in ancient texts like the Nag Hammadi Library, this map presents a universe sharply divided between two utterly different realms: the transcendent, luminous world of divine fullness and the dark, flawed material world of illusion, a creation not of a benevolent God, but of ignorant and malevolent lesser beings. At the very apex of this cosmic map exists the ultimate reality, the Pleroma. This is not a place but a state of being, translated as the fullness. It is an infinite, indescribable realm of pure spirit, light, and consciousness, the source of all that is truly real and good. The Pleroma is inhabited by a complex hierarchy of divine emanations called eons, which are paired male and female expressions of the attributes of the ultimate, unknowable supreme God, the monad. These eons exist in a state of perfect harmony and syzygy, sacred union constantly generating and reflecting divine light and knowledge in a dance of perfect bliss. This is the true home of the human spirit, a realm of pure knowledge and peace that stands in stark, dramatic contrast to everything we experience in our daily lives. So how did we, divine sparks from this perfect Pleroma, end up here in a world so clearly filled with suffering, pain, and death? The Gnostic answer is a cosmic tragedy and a tale of arrogant error. According to the myth, the harmony of the Pleroma was disrupted by a fault within one of the lowest eons, often named Sophia, which means wisdom, driven by a desire to know the unknowable depth of the supreme God. Without her syzygy partner, she overreached. This impulsive act resulted in the creation of a flawed, chaotic thought form, a distorted, ignorant entity separate from the harmony of the Pleroma. This entity is the demiurge, the craftsman god, who is often identified with the vengeful, jealous God of the Old Testament, Yahweh. Blinded by his own ignorance and arrogance, the demiurge believes himself to be the only God and sets about creating the material universe, the cosmos we perceive with our senses. He is not a supreme being but a flawed, often grotesque parody of one, and he creates our world not as a garden of delight but as a prison. He is assisted by his own creations, the archons, meaning rulers or lords. These are the cosmic jailers, robotic and soulless entities whose purpose is to patrol the boundaries of the material world and keep the divine sparks of light, the human spirits trapped within physical bodies, ignorant of their true origin and destiny. They enforce the rules of the prison, which include the cycle of birth, death, and reincarnation, and they use every trick of deception, from religious dogma to material desires, to make us forget who we truly are and where we came from. This is where the map becomes a potent guide for liberation. The entire purpose of human existence, according to this worldview, is to awaken from the illusion of the material world, the hypnotic dreams spun by the archons, and remember our divine origin within the pleroma. This awakening is achieved through gnosis, a Greek word that means not intellectual knowledge, but direct, personal, revelatory experience of the divine. It is an inner knowing, a shocking recognition of one's own true nature as a spark of the ultimate light, trapped in a body of clay. This gnosis is the ultimate treasure, the secret password that allows the soul to navigate past the archons who guard the planetary spheres after death. The Gnostic texts are filled with detailed descriptions of this posthumous journey, providing the dying with the knowledge needed to answer the challenges of each archon and ascend back to the pleroma. This knowledge was the true salvation, the map that showed the way out. This profoundly empowering and subversive narrative provided immense comfort to those living under oppressive conditions, particularly in the early centuries of the Common Era. As the renowned scholar Elaine Pagels noted, this cosmology provided a strategy for transcendence. It offered a powerful explanation for the problem of evil and suffering. The world is flawed because it was created by a flawed, ignorant God, not by the true, good God. This meant that human suffering was not a punishment from a just deity for sin, but rather evidence that we do not belong here. Our feelings of alienation, our longing for something more, our sense that the world is not as it should be, these were not signs of a faithless heart, but proof of our divine origin. By internalizing this myth map, a Gnostic could reframe their entire experience of life. Persecution by political or religious authorities could be seen as the predictable behavior of the archonic system. Personal suffering became a catalyst for seeking the liberating knowledge of Gnosis. This map empowered individuals to challenge the conventional reality presented to them by the powerful, to question authority, and to seek a deeper, hidden truth that promised not just a better afterlife, but a complete escape from the entire cycle of material existence. It demonstrates, perhaps more starkly than any other example, how a myth map can become a revolutionary tool, giving people the conceptual framework to declare that the emperor has no clothes, that the world is a prison, and that the key to freedom has been hidden within their own souls all along. From the secret gnosis that promised escape from a flawed material world, we journey now to a myth map that finds profound meaning not in escape, but in deep-rooted connection, a vision of the cosmos as a great, living tree that binds heaven, earth, and the underworld into a single, sacred whole. This is the Slavic World Tree, a majestic symbol that served as the central pillar of reality for ancient Slavic peoples, a concept with striking similarities to the Norse Yggdrasil, yet possessing its own unique spiritual character and cultural resonance. Imagine an immense oak, its branches brushing the highest heavens, its trunk solidly situated in the world of the living, and its roots delving deep into the mysterious lands of the dead and the unborn. This was not merely a poetic image. It was a functional cosmological model that organized existence into three interconnected realms and provided a timeless guide for living in harmony with the visible and invisible forces of the universe. The three realms connected by this great tree were known as Prav, Yav, and Nav. Prav was the upper world, the celestial realm of the gods, light and absolute order. It was the domain of universal law, truth, and the highest ideals. a place of perfection that stood as the ultimate source of justice and cosmic balance. Below it, connected by the sturdy trunk, was Yav, our tangible middle world. This was the realm of the living, the manifested world of humans, animals, and nature, governed by the cycles of day and night, the changing seasons, and the active struggles of life. It was seen as a kind of crossroads or meeting point where the influences of both Prav and Nav could be felt. And finally, coiling deep within the roots of the tree was Nav, the underworld. Far from a simple hell of punishment, Nav was a complex realm of spirits, ancestors, and the potential for future life. It was the world of the dead, but also a place of hidden knowledge, mystical forces, and the raw, chthonic power of the earth itself. The cycle of life was understood as a journey through these realms. Souls emerged from Nav into Yav to experience life, and upon death, they returned to Nav, where they could eventually be reborn again, in a continuous, sacred cycle that mirrored the perennial growth, death, and regeneration of the tree itself. This tripartite structure was far more than a theoretical concept. It was a practical blueprint that guided the rhythm of daily and seasonal life. The entire Slavic ritual calendar was built around maintaining the balance between these worlds. The changing seasons were not just weather patterns, but were seen as the opening and closing of the gates between Yav and Nav. During pivotal times like the winter solstice or the spring equinox, the veil between worlds was believed to be thin, allowing for communication with ancestors in Nav and the inviting of blessings from the gods in Prav. Specific rituals were performed to ensure the sun would return after the long winter, a direct effort to uphold the order of Prav against the encroaching chaos. Folk tales and epic poems, or bailani, constantly reinforced this map. A hero might descend into Nav to rescue a kidnapped beloved or to retrieve stolen sunlight, symbolizing the eternal struggle to bring order and light from the realm of chaos and potential. These stories were not simple entertainment. They were teaching tools, imparting the crucial understanding that balance between the realms was not automatic. It required active participation, respect, and ritual upkeep from the human community. This is why the observation of folklorist Linda J. Ivanitz is so pivotal. The world tree was indeed a central axis of Slavic cosmology. Its influence extended into the most mundane aspects of existence. This symbolic map was physically embedded into the material culture, making the cosmic order a visible part of the everyday. Women wove intricate representations of the world tree, known as the Tree of Life, into their ritual embroidery on shirts, towels, and tablecloths. These were not mere decorations. They were protective talismans, a way of wearing the sacred structure of the universe to bring the wearer into alignment with Prav and ward off chaotic influences from Nav. The same motif was carved into the wooden eaves of peasant homes and into everyday objects like distaffs and spinning wheels, literally building the cosmology into the architecture of daily life. This constant visual presence served as a perpetual reminder that the home was a microcosm of the universe, a sacred space where the family's actions contributed to the maintenance of cosmic balance. By honoring this map through story, ritual, and art, Slavic communities cultivated a profound ecological and social cohesion. The belief that the natural world was literally connected to the divine fostered a relationship of deep respect and reciprocity with the environment. A forest was not just timber, it was a sacred space, the physical manifestation of the world tree. Certain ancient trees were considered so sacred that cutting them down was believed to bring misfortune, as it would damage the connection between the realms. This worldview encouraged sustainable practices and a sense of stewardship. Socially, the veneration of ancestors who resided in Nav created a powerful sense of continuity and responsibility. The living were not isolated. They were part of a long chain of generations, obligated to honor those who came before and to act in ways that would bring honor to their descendants. This fostered a community ethos where individual actions were measured against their impact on the whole, the family, the village, and the entire cosmic order. The persistence of the World Tree symbol, surviving centuries of political and religious change to remain a potent motif in Slavic folk art and national identity, speaks to a universal and enduring human need. It underscores our deep desire for symbolic structures that can make sense of life's greatest complexities: birth, death, our place in nature, and our relationship with the divine, by offering a vision of a universe that is, at its heart, interconnected, balanced, and whole. From the interconnected realms of the Slavic World Tree, we now travel to the sun-baked plateau of Bandiagara in Mali, where one of the most astonishing and enigmatic myth maps ever documented reveals a celestial knowledge so precise that it continues to captivate and puzzle astronomers to this day. This is the Dogon Cosmology, a complex system of belief that meticulously maps the universe, intertwining the rhythms of agricultural life, the structure of social order, and the deepest mysteries of the stars into a single, coherent whole. For the Dogon people, the cosmos is not a distant abstraction but a living, breathing presence, and their understanding of it, particularly of the Sirius star system, represents a breathtaking fusion of mythological narrative and what can only be called advanced astronomical science, all preserved and transmitted through an unbroken oral tradition. At the very heart of this cosmology is the star Sirius, or Sigi Tolo as the Dogon know it, but their knowledge extends far beyond this brightest of stars. Their oral traditions, shared with French anthropologist Marcel Grioul over years of patient study in the 1930s and 40s, describe with remarkable accuracy that Sirius is not a single star, but part of a binary system. They speak of a tiny, incredibly dense and heavy companion star they call Po Tolo, Po meaning the smallest seed known to them and Tolo meaning star. This seed star, they say, orbits Sirius in an elliptical path, completing its cycle every 50 years, and is made of a metal heavier than all the iron on Earth. To the absolute astonishment of the Western world, this description perfectly matches the white dwarf star Sirius B, which was first observed through telescopes in 1862, but whose existence was only theorized decades earlier. The Dogon, without any optical instruments, knew of its 50-year orbital period, its elliptical orbit, and its immense density properties of white dwarfs that were not fully understood by Western science until the early 20th century. This knowledge wasn't a recent addition. It was embedded in their most ancient creation myths passed down through generations of spiritual leaders. How did they come by this knowledge? The Dogon answer is not one of telescopes and equations, but of divine revelation. Their myth map begins with the creation of the universe by the supreme god, Amma. Amma's act of creation involved the formation of a cosmic egg, whose vibrations and internal structures set the patterns for all of existence. From this egg emerged the Nommo, amphibious, fish-like beings who are the ancestors of humanity and the bringers of civilization. The Nommo are described as celestial beings who arrived from the Sirius system in a great arc that spun through space, accompanied by fire and thunder. This arc, they say, circled the Earth before landing, and it was the Nommo who imparted this profound astronomical knowledge to the first Dogon people, along with the principles of agriculture, weaving, and social order. This narrative is not merely a story, it is a sacred map that connects the Dogon directly to the cosmos, making them active participants in a drama that spans the heavens. This celestial knowledge was not kept in a library. It was physically enacted and ritually reinforced in the most important Dogon ceremony, the Sigui, held once every 60 years, a number closely approximating the 50-year orbit of Sirius B, adjusted by the Dogon to fit their complex calendar system. The Sigwi is a ceremony of world renewal, the recreation of the universe, and the remembrance of the death and resurrection of the first ancestor. Its timing is dictated by the position of the stars. During the ceremony, elders wear elaborate masks and perform dances that reenact the journey of the Nommo and the very structure of the cosmos. The knowledge of Sirius is encoded into the intricate patterns of their masks, the layout of their villages, and the orientation of their sanctuaries. Their entire social organization, from the division of labor to the hierarchy of spiritual knowledge, mirrors this cosmic map. The Hogon, the supreme spiritual leader, is considered the direct earthly representative of the Nommo, and his house is adorned with symbols of the stars and the ark. This is the true function of the myth map. It is a living, breathing guide that orients every aspect of human life, from when to plant millet to how to structure a family, within the grand, sacred architecture of the universe. The work of Marcel Grioul was monumental in documenting this system. He described how Dogon elders would draw intricate diagrams in the sand, mapping out the orbits of stars, the structure of the Milky Way, and even the existence of other celestial bodies like Jupiter's moons and the rings of Saturn, all while weaving these astronomical facts into philosophical discourses on the nature of the soul, the importance of balance, and the ethical responsibilities. Humanity, for the elders, there was no separation between the scientific and the spiritual. To know the stars was to know the mind of Amma, and to live in harmony with those celestial patterns was the highest form of wisdom. This cosmology provided a complete framework for understanding existence, from the microscopic level of a seed to the macroscopic dance of galaxies, illustrating with stunning clarity how a myth map can encode and preserve incredibly sophisticated knowledge across centuries without a single written word. The enduring mystery of how the Dogon acquired this knowledge has sparked endless debate. Some suggest ancient contact with an advanced, perhaps extraterrestrial, civilization as their myths imply. Others propose a more grounded, though no less impressive, explanation, that this knowledge was developed through millennia of meticulous naked eye observation, passed down and refined by a dedicated priestly class with a deep, generational commitment to watching the night sky. Regardless of its origin, the Dogon cosmology stands as a powerful testament to the depth and sophistication of oral traditions. It shatters the arrogant assumption that advanced astronomical understanding was the sole province of the Western scientific revolution. It highlights the profound role these maps play in shaping conscious awareness, providing a people not just with a picture of the universe, but with a profound sense of their place within it, a place defined by harmony, responsibility, and a sacred connection to the stars from which they believe they came. After exploring the intricate celestial knowledge of the Dogon, we now turn to a myth map that introduced one of the most transformative and enduring ideas in human history: the concept that the entire cosmos is locked in a great moral struggle, and that every human being has a personal responsibility to choose a side, with their choices echoing not just for a lifetime but for all eternity. This is the Zoroastrian vision of Frasho-kreti, a breathtakingly ambitious eschatological map that charts nothing less than the complete renovation of existence, from its current flawed state to a final, perfected reality. Born in ancient Persia over 3 millennia ago, this narrative provided a radical new framework for understanding time, morality, and human agency, offering a powerful promise of ultimate justice and a detailed guide for how to help usher it in. The entire Zoroastrian worldview is built upon a fundamental dualism, a cosmic conflict between two primordial spirits. On one side is Ahura Mazda, the wise lord who represents light, truth, order, and all that is good. Opposing him is Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit, the embodiment of darkness, deceit, and chaos. This is not a distant, abstract philosophical idea. It is the engine of reality. The physical world itself is the battlefield. Every natural disaster, every instance of disease, every act of cruelty is a manifestation of Angra Mainyu's assault on Ahura Mazda's good creation. And humanity is not a passive spectator in this drama. According to the prophet Zarathustra, Ahura Mazda created humans as his active allies. Chinese letter ing them free will, so they could consciously choose to fight for the side of good. This was a revolutionary concept. The purpose of human life was no longer simply to appease capricious gods or navigate a predetermined fate. It was to become a soldier in a cosmic war for the very soul of creation. This ongoing struggle finds its ultimate resolution in the grand map of Frasho-kreti, which translates to making wonderful or renovation. This is the final apocalyptic chapter of history, a series of events that will purify the world and restore it to its original perfect state. The map details a coming savior figure, the Saoshyant, who will be born of a virgin and from the seed of Zarathustra himself. The Saoshyant will lead the forces of good in a final, catastrophic battle against the forces of evil, a conflict that will culminate in the complete defeat and destruction of Angra Mainyu and all his demonic followers. But the renovation does not end with a military victory. The earth itself must be cleansed. The myths describe a river of molten metal that will flow across the entire world. For the righteous, this river will feel like warm milk, a soothing bath that washes away their last impurities. For the wicked, it will be the ultimate and final punishment, a searing agony that utterly annihilates them, purifying the world of their corruption forever. What happens next is perhaps the most beautiful and hopeful endpoint of any eschatological map. The world, now utterly free from the stain of evil, is transformed. The mountains will be ground down into smooth plains, and the earth will become flat and abundant. Humanity itself will be transformed. People will become immortal, ageless, and transparent, speaking a single language and living in perfect harmony. Even the dead are not left out of this glorious conclusion. In a stunningly compassionate twist, all souls who had ever lived, including those who had been purified in the river of metal, would be resurrected to enjoy this eternal, perfected existence. Death itself, the ultimate tool of Angra Mainyu, is finally defeated. This is the final state of Frasho-kreti, a universe restored to its original goodness, a paradise not in a distant heaven, but right here on a renewed earth, where the living and the resurrected dead enjoy eternal bliss in the direct presence of Ahura Mazda. This elaborate map was far more than a fascinating story about the end of the world. It was a powerful ethical engine that drove Zoroastrian behavior every single day. As the renowned scholar Mary Boyce noted, Frasho-kreti provided a teleological roadmap for history. It gave time a direction and a purpose. History was not a meaningless cycle of repetition. It was a linear progression with a defined beginning, a central conflict, and a glorious, guaranteed ending. This knowledge was incredibly empowering. It meant that every good thought, every truthful word, and every righteous action was not just a personal choice, but a direct contribution to the cosmic war effort. Planting a tree was an act of opposing the spirit of decay. Telling the truth was a blow against the force of deceit. Caring for the environment, the good creation of Ahura Mazda, was a sacred duty. Conversely, lying, polluting, or acting with cruelty was not just a sin. It was a betrayal, an act that actively strengthened the enemy and delayed the coming renovation. This framework instilled a profound sense of social responsibility and optimistic urgency. The world would be saved, and you had a vital, active role to play in its salvation. The influence of this Zoroastrian myth map on subsequent world religions is almost impossible to overstate. During the Babylonian exile, the Jewish people came into close contact with Zoroastrian ideas, and concepts that were vague or absent in earlier Hebrew thought suddenly came into sharp focus. The idea of a final, universal judgment, a clear dichotomy between a paradise for the righteous and a place of punishment for the wicked, a resurrected body, and a messianic savior who would defeat evil. All these core tenets of later Judaism and subsequently Christianity and Islam find their first clear expression in the map of Frasho-kreti. It provided the basic apocalyptic blueprint that would shape Western eschatology for the next 2,500 years. Beyond its historical impact, this map endures as a powerful testament to the human capacity for hope and moral courage. It taught that the universe is fundamentally moral, that good will ultimately prevail, and that our choices matter on a cosmic scale. It offered not a passive hope for rescue, but an active call to arms, transforming every individual into a crucial agent of destiny, tasked with helping to make the world wonderful once again. Venturing now from the grand cosmic battlefields of Zoroastrian Persia, we arrive in a world of stark, breathtaking immediacy, the vast, frozen expanse of the Arctic, where survival is measured in breaths and the next meal is never guaranteed. Here, the myth maps of the Inuit peoples were not about distant heavens or far-off endings. They were urgent, practical guides for navigating a landscape of immense beauty and profound danger. A spiritual cartography that mapped the delicate, essential relationships between human, animal, and spirit. In a world of ice and endless winter nights, these stories and carvings were not mere folklore. They were the fundamental operating system for life itself, a profound fusion of ecology, ethics, and cosmology that ensured both physical survival and spiritual harmony. At the very heart of this intricate belief system sits Sedna, the powerful and often terrifying sea goddess, ruler of the marine animals upon which life depends. Her story is a foundational myth map of the relationship between humanity and the natural world. In the most common telling, Sedna was a young woman betrayed by her father. During a storm at sea, he threw her overboard to save himself, and when she clung to the side of the boat, he chopped off her fingers. As she sank to the ocean floor, her severed fingers transformed into the seals, walruses, and whales, the very creatures that would become the primary source of food, clothing, and tools for the Inuit people. Sedna herself, now residing in a remote underwater abode, became the master of these animals, controlling their availability to hunters. Her physical state is crucial to the map. Her hair, representing the sins and taboos broken by the human community, becomes tangled and matted, causing her great pain. When this happens, in her anguish, she withholds the animals and famine stalks the land. This narrative maps a direct, tangible cause and effect between human morality and physical survival. The path to restoring balance is not a vague prayer, but a specific shamanic journey. A powerful Angakok or shaman must undertake a perilous spiritual voyage to the bottom of the sea. There they must approach the great goddess, calm her rage, and carefully comb the tangles from her hair, thus ritually cleansing the community of its transgressions. Only then will Sedna release the animals, allowing the hunt to be successful once more. This is a map of incredible psychological and ecological sophistication. It directly links community ethics, respect for animals, sharing of food, observance of taboos, to the well-being of the entire ecosystem. A period of poor hunting is not a random stroke of bad luck. It is a diagnosable spiritual illness with a prescribed ritual cure. This system fosters a profound and active respect for the animals, who are never seen as mere resources but as sentient beings with souls. gifts from a deity who must be treated with honor. Every part of a captured seal is used, and rituals of thanks are performed to show gratitude for its sacrifice, ensuring the cyclical relationship remains in balance. But the Inuit spiritual cartography extends far beyond the sea. Another critical realm in this cosmic map is the sky world, often associated with Sela, a concept that embodies the weather, the air, the life force, and the overarching intelligence of the universe. Sela is not a personified god with a beard, but a pervasive, conscious presence in the environment. Navigating the weather was a matter of life and death, and understanding the will of Sela was paramount. The myths map the behavior of the winds, the formation of storms, and the patterns of the stars, often through stories of celestial beings. The aurora borealis, for instance, might be described as the spirits of the dead playing a ball game with a walrus skull across the heavens, their flickering lights a reminder of the constant presence of the ancestors. This belief encouraged a state of constant, respectful awareness. One did not shout or whistle angrily in a strong wind for fear of offending Sela and provoking a greater storm. This was not superstition. It was a practical code for living in a hypersensitive environment, a way of mapping proper behavior onto the most powerful and unpredictable forces of nature. The profound practicality of this entire system was meticulously documented by the Danish Inuit explorer and anthropologist Knud Rasmussen in the early 20th century. During his fifth Thule expedition, he traveled by dogsled for years, living with and recording the stories and beliefs of Inuit groups from Greenland to Alaska. He found not a collection of primitive superstitions, but a complex and coherent philosophy perfectly adapted to its environment. He noted how the stories of Sedna and the sky world encoded precise ecological knowledge. Taboos against mixing land and sea animals in the same hunt on the same day, for example, were not arbitrary rules but conservation measures that prevented overhunting of specific areas. Stories about the specific behaviors of different seal species taught careful observation and tracking skills. The shaman's journey to Sedna was, in a very real sense, a community therapy session. When food was scarce, instead of succumbing to despair, infighting, or hoarding, the community would turn inward. They would confess transgressions, settle disputes, and reaffirm their social bonds, led by the shaman who would then undertake his spiritual quest. This process released social tensions and restored collective hope, a psychological resilience strategy as vital as any physical tool. By internalizing this myth map, an Inuit hunter moved through the world with a dual awareness. He was a supremely skilled technician, reading the density of sea ice, the direction of the wind, and the subtle signs of prey with unparalleled expertise. Simultaneously, he was a participant in a sacred drama, a respectful negotiator in a world alive with conscious, powerful forces. His success and his very life depended on his ability to navigate both realities at once. This rich symbolic world, expressed in exquisite soapstone carvings and haunting oral stories, demonstrates the incredible human capacity to not just endure harsh landscapes, but to find deep meaning and a precise ethical guide within them. The Arctic was not a wasteland to be conquered, but a conscious, responsive community to which humanity belonged. The Inuit spirit maps taught that survival was not a battle against nature, but a continuous, respectful conversation with it. While other myth maps guided journeys across continents or through the heavens, one of the most intimate and revolutionary guides ever created turns the focus of exploration radically inward, transforming the very vessel we inhabit into a universe of infinite depth and wonder. This is the Taoist inner landscape of the body, a breathtakingly intricate spiritual cartography that does not chart external territories but maps the rivers of energy, the mountains of spirit, and the sacred chambers within the human form itself. Imagine a guide that teaches you to navigate your own bloodstream as if it were the Milky Way, to locate the reservoirs of vital force as you would a hidden spring in a forest, and to cultivate a state of harmony within your own being that mirrors the perfect, effortless order of the cosmos. This is not a metaphor. For ancient Taoist sages, the body was a literal microcosm, a miniature reflection of the entire universe, and understanding its internal geography was the ultimate path to health, longevity, and spiritual liberation. The foundational text for this internal exploration is the ancient Huangdi Nijing, or the Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon, a profound dialogue on medicine and cosmology that lays out the core principles of this living map. At the heart of this system is the concept of Kai, the vital life force that animates all things. But this Kai does not flow randomly. The Taoists mapped its precise pathways through a complex network of channels known as meridians. Think of these not as physical nerves or blood vessels, but as invisible rivers of energy, 12 primary channels and 8 extraordinary vessels that form a sophisticated circulatory system for life force itself. Each meridian is associated with a specific organ, but in Taoist thought, an organ is far more than a piece of biological tissue. The heart, for instance, is not just a pump, it is the seat of the spirit, the emperor of the body, responsible for consciousness and joy. The kidneys are not merely filters, they are the root of our primal vitality, the storehouse of our ancestral essence, or Jing. Blockages or deficiencies in the flow of Kai through these meridian rivers were understood to be the root cause of disease, both physical and emotional. A stagnation in the liver meridian might manifest as physical pain in the side, but also as unchecked anger or frustration. This holistic view made no separation between the health of the body and the state of the mind. They were two expressions of the same flowing energy. The most crucial landmarks on this internal map are the 3 Danshan, or elixir fields. These are not anatomical organs but potent focal points for energy cultivation and spiritual alchemy. The lower Danshan, located a few finger widths below the navel, is the body's powerhouse, the furnace where our raw, inherited essence is transformed into usable energy. It is the root of our physical strength and stability, the center of gravity from which all martial arts and healing practices emanate. The middle Danshan, in the center of the chest, is the seat of compassion and emotional balance, the transformer that converts energy into the higher vibration of emotional and relational harmony. And the upper Danshan, in the center of the head, is the palace of the spirit, the gateway to intuition, insight, and cosmic consciousness. The ultimate goal of internal alchemy is to refine the coarse energy of the lower Danshan, raising it through the center to nourish the spirit in the upper Danshan, a process of self-transformation that turns the base materials of ordinary existence into the gold of enlightened awareness. This intricate internal cartography was not developed for abstract study. It was a practical guide for action, providing the blueprint for a suite of powerful self-cultivation practices. Qigong, which means energy work, is the art of gently moving the body to encourage the smooth and abundant flow of Kai through the meridians, clearing blockages and strengthening the entire system. The slow, deliberate movements of Tai Chi are a moving meditation on this internal map, a way of physically tracing the pathways of energy with the limbs and breath. And seated meditation, or Zhuowang, involves mentally navigating this landscape, using the mind's eye to circulate energy along the governing and conception vessels that form the body's central power channel, often called the microcosmic orbit. This is why scholar Livia Cohn so perfectly described this system as offering a geography of inner transformation. It gives the practitioner a tangible, felt sense of their inner world, You are not just relaxing, you are consciously directing the waters of life to a parched area, or calming a storm in your emotional center, or stoking the fire in your core to warm your entire being. By internalizing this myth map, an individual became the active architect of their own well-being. A headache was no longer a random affliction to be silenced with a pill. It was a sign of rebellious chi rushing to the head, perhaps from a deficiency in the kidneys below, and the remedy involved specific breathing techniques to guide that energy back down its proper course. This framework empowered people, giving them agency over their health and their spiritual state. It demonstrated, perhaps more personally than any other myth map, how these ancient guides were not about escaping the world, but about mastering our experience within it. The body was no longer a temporary shell or a source of suffering. It was a sacred landscape, a temple, and a laboratory for the most important experiment of all: the conscious journey toward harmony, balance, and ultimate unity with the serene, unstoppable flow of the Tao itself. If the Egyptian Book of the Dead was a guidebook for navigating the afterlife with confidence, and the Greek underworld a structured realm of moral consequence, then the Sumerian vision of the Netherworld presents us with perhaps the most stark and unvarnished myth map of all, a cartography of pure, unmitigated finality. This is the grim landscape detailed in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest known great work of literature, and it offers no salvation, no reward, and no escape. It is a map that leads to one destination and one destination only: the dusty, dark, and joyless realm of the dead, a place where the soul's only sustenance is the memory of the life it left behind. This was not a system of punishment for sin, but a simple, terrifyingly egalitarian fate that awaited every single human being, from the most powerful king to the lowliest slave, and its profound bleakness served as the ultimate catalyst for one of history's most poignant questions. If this is all there is, then what is the point of life? The journey to this underworld, known as Kur or Urkala, is a one-way trip to a place of no return. The epic's description, given to Gilgamesh by the ghost of his slain friend Enkidu, is haunting in its visceral detail. To reach it, one must pass through a terrifying darkness that lasts for 12 double hours, a journey that itself symbolizes the irreversible passage from the world of the living into the absolute unknown. Upon arrival, the soul finds itself in a vast, cavernous space beneath the earth, a land of dust and silence. There is no light here, no fresh water, only stale, brackish water to drink and dirt to eat. The dead are not vibrant spirits, but giddim, weak, whimpering shades who flutter about like birds, clothed only in feathers, their identities and earthly power utterly erased. In this realm, presided over by the stern and mournful Queen Ereshkigal and her scribe, the death god Namta, there is no judgment, no weighing of the heart. The only thing that matters is the manner of one's death. Those who received proper burial rites and were remembered by their descendants might experience a slightly less miserable existence, while those who died alone and unmourned, whose bodies were left to rot in the open, are condemned to an eternity of endlessly wandering the outskirts of this vast, gloomy domain. This stark vision was the brutal, sobering truth that Gilgamesh, the powerful king of Uruk, was forced to confront. The entire epic is at its heart a reaction to this myth map. Gilgamesh begins as a hubristic and restless ruler, but the sudden, tragic death of his beloved friend Enkidu shatters his worldview. For the first time, he is confronted with his own mortality, and the map of the netherworld that Enkidu describes fills him with a paralyzing terror. He realizes that all his strength, all his conquests, all his royal power are utterly meaningless in the face of this inevitable, grim fate. This sparks his desperate, obsessive quest for immortality. He abandons his throne, dons animal skins, and wanders the wilderness seeking Utnapishtim, the Mesopotamian Noah who survived the Great Flood and was granted eternal life by the gods. Gilgamesh's journey is the ultimate expression of a human being trying to defy the map, to find a secret route off of it, to cheat the system that every other human has been forced to accept. His quest, of course, ends in failure, but it is a failure that contains the entire moral of the story. After a series of impossible trials, he finally finds Utnapishtim, who tells him the story of the flood and then offers him a simple test: stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights to prove he is worthy of the god's gift. Exhausted from his journey, Gilgamesh immediately fails, falling into a deep sleep. Upon waking, he is humiliated, his weakness laid bare. As a final consolation, Utnapishtim's wife tells him of a magical plant at the bottom of the sea that can restore a man's youth. Gilgamesh retrieves it, only to have it stolen by a serpent while he bathes, a scene that explains the snake's ability to shed its skin and seemingly rejuvenate itself. In this moment, Gilgamesh finally understands. He sits down by the shore and weeps, not just for the lost plant, but for the futility of his entire quest. He has been given the map and he has tried to redraw it, and he has learned that it cannot be redrawn. The map is fixed. Death is the universal, non-negotiable border. This is where the myth map provides its profound and unexpected comfort. The lesson is not one of despair, but of reorientation. Since you cannot change the destination, you must change what the journey means. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk a transformed man. He is no longer a tyrant seeking personal glory or a desperate fugitive from fate. He becomes a true king, a wise leader who now understands that the only immortality available to a human is the immortality of legacy. He looks upon the mighty walls of Uruk, the great libraries, the thriving city he built, and he realizes that this is his answer to the bleakness of the Netherworld. We cannot live forever, but our works can, our stories can. The memory of our deeds, preserved in the community we built and the people we loved, becomes our true, enduring presence in the world. This is the cultural value that Assyriologist Stephanie Daly refers to, the sobering perspective on human limits that paradoxically inspires greatness. It fosters a culture that values monumental architecture, detailed record-keeping, and the preservation of story, because these things are the only bulwark against the eternal silence of the grave. By internalizing this stark map, a Sumerian could find a powerful and pragmatic meaning in their fleeting existence. Life was not a prelude to a better hereafter. It was the one and only chance to make a mark, to contribute to something larger than oneself that would outlast one's own brief time in the sun. It encouraged a focus on family, on community, and on achievement, not for personal aggrandizement, but for the sake of adding one's own brick to the eternal wall of human civilization. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its unflinching map of the Netherworld, does not trivialize life by making death the end. It elevates life by making it absolutely everything we have. It is a map that, by showing us the absolute worst destination imaginable, teaches us to truly cherish and make meaningful every single step of the journey that leads there. Now we travel to West Africa, to the rich spiritual landscape of the Yoruba people, where we discover a myth map of breathtaking complexity and profound practicality, a system that does not merely describe destiny, but provides the tools to actively engage with it. This is the Ifá Divination system, a vast and intricate corpus of sacred knowledge that serves as a living encyclopedia of wisdom, a guide for ethical living, and a sophisticated tool for navigating the unpredictable currents of human life. Imagine a spiritual technology so comprehensive that it can address everything from a king's political dilemma to a farmer's crop failure, from a couple's infertility to a community's moral crisis, all through the interpretation of an ancient poetic code. Ifá is not fortune-telling. It is a dynamic map of cosmic order and human potential, a dialogue with the very structure of existence itself. At the heart of this system is the belief in a personal destiny, or Ianmo, a unique path and purpose that each soul chooses before entering the world. However, this path is not a rigid, predetermined script. Life's challenges, personal choices, and external influences can cause one to stray from this destined course, leading to difficulty, misfortune, and a sense of being lost. The role of Ifá is to act as a spiritual GPS, realigning the individual with their Ianmo. This process is facilitated by a priest known as a Babalawo, which translates to Father of Secrets. The Babalawo is not a mystic who relies on vague intuition. He is a highly trained scholar, a master of a vast oral literature who undergoes decades of rigorous study to learn the complex language of this divine system. His tools are simple yet powerful, a divination tray often carved with symbolic figures representing the crossroads of life, and a chain called an opal, or 16 sacred palm nuts known as ikin. The consultation begins with a ritual casting. The Babalawo throws the opal chain onto the tray, and the way its 8 halves land either face up or face down generates a binary code. This code corresponds to one of 256 primary combinations, known as Odu. Each Odu is not a simple answer but a gateway to a vast reservoir of knowledge. It is the name of a specific chapter in the Grand Book of Ifá. Every Odu contains hundreds of poetic verses, proverbs, parables, and stories that relate to the client's situation. For instance, the Odu called Oyaku Meji might speak of necessary endings and the wisdom of retreat, while Irasun Meji might tell a story about the dangers of arrogance and the importance of community. The Babalawo, drawing from his immense memorized library, recites the verses relevant to the client's query. The brilliance of the system lies in its narrative depth. It doesn't just give a yes or no. It provides context, historical precedent, and a mythological framework through which to understand the present challenge. The verses are populated by the Orishas, the powerful divine forces of the Yoruba pantheon who govern different aspects of nature and human life. Central to Ifá is Orunmila, the Orisha of wisdom, knowledge, and divination, who has witnessed the fate of every soul at their creation. The stories of his journeys and interventions provide the archetypal patterns for human experience. Another verse might tell of the fiery and transformative Ogun, the warrior and god of iron, to illustrate the need for decisive action. A story about the nurturing, riverine energy of Oshun might be invoked to highlight the importance of love, beauty, and diplomacy. These are not distant gods, they are personifications of universal principles, and their stories offer a mirror for the client's own life, revealing the underlying dynamics at play. This is why the renowned scholar and Babalawo Wand Abimbola so perfectly described Ifá as a comprehensive roadmap for living. It is a guide that integrates spirituality with tangible, everyday reality. After identifying the relevant Odu and its teachings, the Babalawo will often prescribe a solution, which may include specific ethical actions, a change in behavior, or a ritual offering known as Igbo. This Igbo is not a superstitious bribe to the gods. It is a deeply symbolic act of participation and realignment. It is a way for the individual to physically demonstrate their commitment to changing their course, to actively participate in their own healing and alignment. By performing the Igbo, the person engages with the symbolic language of the myth map, literally enacting the correction needed to get their life back on its destined track. Ultimately, the power of the Ifá system lies in the profound agency and clarity it provides. In a world filled with uncertainty, it offers a framework for understanding that is both cosmic and intimately personal. It transforms life's random misfortunes into diagnosable situations with prescribed solutions. It relieves the anxiety of the unknown by placing every event within a larger, meaningful narrative of cosmic order and personal destiny. By consulting this map, an individual is empowered to move through the world not as a passive victim of circumstance, but as an active, conscious co-creator of their life path, equipped with ancient wisdom, practical steps, and a renewed sense of purpose that has been fostering community cohesion and resilience for centuries. From the communal and consultative wisdom of the Ifá system, we now step into the dim, torch-lit confines of a subterranean temple, a Mithraeum hidden beneath the bustling streets of the Roman Empire. Here, in this exclusive, male-only sanctuary, we encounter a myth map of profound secrecy and rigorous personal transformation, the Mithraic cosmic grades and initiation rituals. This was not a map for the masses, but a step-by-step guide for a spiritual elite, a structured path of 7 stages that promised to elevate the soul through the celestial spheres, aligning the initiate's inner being with the very architecture of the cosmos. It was a system that masterfully blended the observational science of astronomy with the transformative power of mythology, creating an immersive psychological journey that reshaped a man's identity from the inside out. The journey began with the first grade, Korax the Raven. This initial stage was one of humble service and messenger duty, symbolizing the soul's earthly, material beginnings. The raven, a creature that feeds on carrion, represented the mortal part of man that must be left behind. An initiate at this level was considered a servant to the higher grades, learning the basic doctrines and proving his dedication. From there, he would aspire to the grade of Nymphus, the bridegroom. This was a curious and unique stage, often depicted with a veil, symbolizing a mystical marriage to the sun god Sol Invictus, the divine companion of Mithras. It represented a commitment to the path, a betrothal to the divine light that would guide him forward. The third grade, Miles, the soldier, was a pivotal step. Here, the initiate underwent a powerful ritual of renunciation. He was presented with a crown offered on a sword. His duty was to push it aside, declaring that Mithras alone was his crown. This was a symbolic rejection of worldly glory and earthly allegiance, a vow of loyalty to the god and his fellow initiates above all else. Having proven his loyalty, the seeker then advanced into the middle ranks, starting with Leo, the lion. This grade was deeply associated with the element of fire and the planet Jupiter. Leos were involved in the preparation of the ritual feasts that mimicked the great banquet shared by Mithras and Sol. This stage marked a shift toward a more active, fiery role in the cult's practices, focusing on purity and the beginning of a more profound spiritual purification. The fifth grade, Perses, the Persian, honored the ancient origins of the cult. Linked to the moon, this grade connected the initiate to the wisdom of the East, the legendary birthplace of Mithras. Perses was a guardian of the ancestral traditions and lore, deepening his connection to the mythic roots of the faith. The 2 highest grades represented the pinnacle of spiritual attainment within the cult. Heliodromus, the Sun Runner, was the 6th grade, embodied by the sun itself. The man who reached this stage acted as the deputy to the highest-ranking member during rituals, representing Sol Invictus in the reenactment of the sacred meal. He had achieved a near-cosmic status, his soul harmonized with the radiant, life-giving power of the sun. Finally, there was Pater, the Father. This was the ultimate grade, corresponding to the planet Saturn, the farthest and oldest of the known planets, which represented the boundary between the temporal world and the eternal. The Pater was the spiritual father of the community, a wise leader who had symbolically traversed the entire cosmic ladder. He often wore a Phrygian cap like Mithras himself and was seen as the living representative of the god's authority and wisdom on earth. This intricate seven-stage ladder was far more than a series of titles. It was a complete map for the soul's ascent. Each grade was believed to open the initiate to the influence of a specific planetary sphere, granting him the virtues and protections of that celestial body, while also freeing him from its astrological limitations. The goal was to purify the soul of all material contamination as it ascended, preparing it for a final journey through the planetary spheres after death to reunite with the divine source from which it came. This is why the great historian of mystery cults, Franz Cumont, so aptly described Mithraism as offering a celestial ladder for the soul. It provided a tangible, experiential process of salvation achieved not through faith alone, but through disciplined progression, moral rectitude, and the transformative power of ritual. The rituals themselves were designed to be deeply immersive and psychologically jarring, cementing the lessons of each grade. While the exact details remain secret, evidence suggests they involved symbolic deaths and rebirths, tests of endurance, exposure to heat and cold, and perhaps even visionary experiences induced by sensory deprivation or other techniques within the cave like Mithraism. The central image in every temple was the Tauroctony Mithras slaying the cosmic bull, a scene packed with astrological symbolism that served as a constant visual reminder of the god's act of creation and the initiate's own struggle to overcome his lower nature. By physically and mentally enduring these trials, a man didn't just learn about transformation, he experienced it viscerally. His identity was systematically dismantled and rebuilt according to the sacred map, forging an unbreakable bond with his fellow initiates and a renewed consciousness that saw the universe as an ordered, hierarchical, but ultimately conquerable system. This powerful combination of myth, astronomy, and ritual psychology created one of the most compelling and influential myth maps of the ancient world, offering a structured path to enlightenment that left an indelible mark on every man brave enough to walk its demanding path. After navigating the secretive, transformative stages of the Mithraic mysteries, we now arrive at a myth map of astonishing architectural complexity and unwavering moral precision. A vision of the universe so meticulously detailed that it functions as both a cosmic blueprint and an exhaustive ethical guide. This is the Jain Cosmological Map, a vast, multi-layered model of reality that stretches the imagination with its sheer scale and intricate order, all designed with one ultimate purpose: to illuminate the direct and inescapable consequences of every single thought, word, and action, thereby charting the soul's journey toward absolute liberation. For the Jain community, this is not a speculative fantasy. It is a definitive cartography of existence, a master diagram that reveals how karma physically shapes destiny and how only through intense personal discipline can one ultimately break free. The entire structure of the Jain universe, or Loka, is often depicted in sacred texts and artworks as a colossal, three-dimensional figure resembling a stylized human being standing with arms akimbo. This is the Lokapurusha, a personification of the cosmos itself. Within this immense form are three distinct realms, stacked vertically in a precise hierarchy that reflects the soul's spiritual weight. At the very narrowest part of the waste lies the middle world, our own realm of human experience. This is the Manushya Loka, the only plane in the entire cosmos where liberation is possible. It is a place of both immense suffering and unparalleled opportunity, a spiritual crossroads where the agony of existence provides the necessary friction to motivate the quest for freedom. Below the middle world, widening out like a skirt, are the 7 tiers of the lower worlds, the Naroka. These are not realms of eternal damnation under a vengeful god, but temporary, yet terrifyingly intense karmic correctional facilities. Each successive level down is a chamber of exponentially greater torment, where souls endure sufferings perfectly tailored to the specific negative karmas they accumulated, be it through cruelty, greed, or deceit. The time spent here is vast, measured in thousands of years, but it is not infinite. It is a finite sentence of purification. Once the negative karma is fully exhausted, the soul is released to be reborn again elsewhere. Above the middle world, extending upward through the chest and head of the Lokapurusha, are the heavens, but even these are a mixed blessing. The lower heavens are realms of sublime sensory pleasure, where beings enjoy the rewards of their good deeds for eons. Yet this pleasure is the ultimate trap. Intoxicated by bliss and comfort, these celestial beings forget to pursue spiritual progress. When their store of good karma finally runs out, they inevitably fall, often plunging down to the lower realms in a devastating crash. Higher still are the upper heavens, where the beings have transcended sensory pleasure and exist in a state of pure meditative joy. But even this is not the final goal. At the very apex of the cosmos, forming the crown of the Lokapurusha, is the realm of the Siddhas, the liberated souls. This is the ultimate destination, a state of infinite knowledge, perception, energy, and bliss, utterly free from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. It is a state of pure, undifferentiated consciousness, having escaped the gravitational pull of karma entirely. The entire cosmological map is thus a detailed chart of cause and effect, a cosmic ladder where one's own actions determine the next rung, whether it leads upward, downward, or offers the chance to finally step off altogether. This incredibly detailed architecture is not meant to be a passive spectacle. It is the engine of Jain ethics. The entire system is powered by the physics of karma, envisioned not as a vague spiritual force but as a literal, subtle matter, a fine particulate dust that adheres to the soul based on its actions. Every time we act with anger, pride, deceit, or greed, we attract a thick, heavy type of karma that binds us tightly to the cycle of rebirth in lower, more painful realms. Every act of compassion, honesty, humility, and most importantly, non-violence attracts a lighter, more ephemeral karma that allows for movement toward the upper realms. The most toxic karma of all is generated by violence because it directly harms other consciousnesses and creates the most dense and sticky karmic matter. This is why the principle of ahimsa, non-violence in thought, word, and deed, is the absolute cornerstone of Jain practice. It is not merely a moral suggestion, it is a practical, spiritual hygiene, a way to stop the influx of the most damaging karmic particles. This is why the renowned Jain philosopher Padmanabh S. Jaini so accurately described this system as a moral geography. The map provides a stunningly clear visual and conceptual framework for the ethical consequences of behavior. To understand that a moment of heated rage is literally weighing your soul down, pulling it toward a future in the Naraka, is a powerful deterrent. Conversely, to know that an act of patience or charity is lightening your karmic load, making liberation more attainable, is a profound motivator. This cosmology makes ethics immediate, tangible, and deeply personal. It encourages a state of radical mindfulness, or a pramata, in every single action. A Jain practitioner is taught to move through the world with extreme care, sweeping the path before they walk to avoid crushing insects, filtering drinking water to protect microscopic organisms, and speaking with gentle precision to avoid harming others with words. These are not eccentric rituals, they are the applied, daily practices of someone who has fully internalized the cosmological map. They are the necessary disciplines for navigating the world without accumulating more karma, while simultaneously engaging in ascetic practices to shed the karma one already has. By living in accordance with this map, a Jain individual cultivates an extraordinary degree of self-reliance and discipline. There is no creator god to petition for salvation. The responsibility for liberation rests entirely on the individual's own efforts. The path is one of self-purification through the three jewels: right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct. The myth map provides the knowledge, the layout of the universe, and the laws that govern it. Faith is the trust in that map, and conduct is the daily journey across its terrain. This demonstrates with unparalleled clarity how a myth map can transcend mere description to become the most powerful of ethical tools. It promotes a framework of profound compassion, not out of fear of punishment from an external judge, but from a deep, scientific understanding of the interconnected nature of all souls and the universal laws that bind them. It turns life itself into a conscious, moment-to-moment pilgrimage toward a freedom that is not a gift, but an achievement, a hard-won escape from a cosmos of one's own making. And finally, we arrive at a myth map that has perhaps resonated more deeply across Western culture than any other. A story that transformed the brutal realities of medieval warfare into a sublime allegory for the most profound inner journey a human can undertake. This is the Arthurian Grail quest, a powerful symbolic chart that guided knights not merely through physical forests and castles, but through the treacherous terrain of their own souls, mapping a path from spiritual desolation to divine fulfillment. Emerging from a rich fusion of ancient Celtic otherworldly lore and the burgeoning spiritual ideals of Christianity, the Grail legend is far more than a thrilling adventure. It is a sophisticated psychological and moral blueprint, a detailed guide for personal transformation that holds a mirror to our deepest aspirations and failings. At the heart of this map lies its central symbol, the Holy Grail itself. Though later tradition would define it as the cup from Christ's Last Supper, its earliest literary appearances present it as something far more mysterious and numinous: a shimmering dish, a stone that provides sustenance, a vessel of impossible grace that refuses to be pinned down by a single definition. This is its power. The Grail is not a mere object to be found, but a state of being to be earned. It represents ultimate spiritual attainment, divine communion, and the healing of a profound, foundational wound. Its absence is directly linked to the condition of the wasteland, a kingdom rendered barren and infertile by the spiritual failure of its ruler, the wounded Fisher King. The land and the king are one. The internal sickness of the leader manifests as external blight upon the world. This establishes the first and most crucial lesson of the Grail map: the quest for healing is not a selfish pursuit. The restoration of the individual is intrinsically tied to the renewal of the entire community. The knight's personal journey toward purity is the very key that unlocks salvation for everyone. The map of this quest is most perfectly traced in the story of the archetypal hero, Sir Percival, the pure fool. His journey is the map in motion. A rustic youth raised in ignorance of knightly ways, Percival's initial purity is not a virtue of wisdom, but of innocence. He arrives at the mysterious Grail Castle, the hidden sanctuary of the wounded Fisher King, and witnesses a staggering procession, maidens carrying a bleeding lance, and finally, the radiant Grail itself. Here, the map presents its critical test. Consumed by the courtly training that taught him to be silent and polite above all else, Percival fails to ask the crucial, compassionate question: whom does the Grail serve? Or, what ails thee, uncle? This single failure of nerve, this lapse into passive observance rather than active, empathetic engagement, causes the entire vision to vanish. The castle disappears, and Percival finds himself alone on the barren rocks, the opportunity lost. His subsequent years are spent in a desperate, wandering quest to find the castle again, a period of grueling atonement and learning. This pivotal moment maps a universal truth. Enlightenment is not granted to the passive observer. It requires the courage to engage deeply, to ask the difficult questions, and to express compassion even when protocol dictates silence. The quest, therefore, becomes a process of refining the hero's character. Percival must move from foolish innocence to earned virtue. He must integrate the lessons of the other knights he meets, the unwavering faith of Galahad, the steadfast loyalty of Lancelot, the fierce courage of Gawain. His path is strewn with challenges that are external manifestations of internal states. He battles other knights not just as opponents, but as projections of his own pride, doubt, and aggression. He must resist the temptations of worldly enchantments that represent the lure of ego and sensual distraction. Every adventure is a lesson, every failure a correction on the internal map. The ultimate goal is not to possess the Grail, but to become a person worthy of it, to achieve a state of spiritual integrity where one's actions are perfectly aligned with a higher purpose. This is why the mythologist Joseph Campbell so brilliantly recognized the Grail quest as a map of the transformative process. It perfectly illustrates the hero's journey not as a conquest of the external world, but as an arduous process of inner death and rebirth, where the old, selfish self must be shed so the new, enlightened self can emerge. This medieval myth map continues to exert a powerful pull on the modern imagination because its symbols are timeless. The wasteland is any life, any society that has lost its sense of meaning and connection, languishing in spiritual drought. The Grail is the elusive sense of wholeness, purpose, and healing we all seek. The question, whom does the Grail serve, is the challenge we all face, to look beyond our own immediate desires and ask how our lives can serve a greater good. The map teaches that the journey requires the purity of Percival, not in the sense of naivete, but of single-minded focus and uncorrupted intention. It requires the courage to confront our own wounds, the Fisher King within us whose unresolved pain creates barrenness in our lives. And ultimately, it requires the faith that the hidden castle of grace can be found again, if we persevere with a compassionate heart. The Arthurian legend, in mapping this inner landscape onto a chivalric adventure, provided a template that makes the most daunting of spiritual journeys feel attainable, framing the soul's search for meaning as the greatest and most noble quest of all. What emerges so powerfully from this grand tour of 25 myth maps is not just their dazzling diversity, but the profound and universal human yearnings they all seem to answer. From the celestial river roads of the Polynesians to the internal energy meridians of the Taoists, these ancient guides, despite being born worlds and millennia apart, all serve the same fundamental purposes, revealing a shared blueprint of the human spirit. First and foremost, they provide an essential structure for understanding existence, transforming a terrifying and chaotic universe into a known and ordered cosmos. The unknown is perhaps the greatest source of human anxiety, the blank spaces on the map where monsters might lurk. Whether it's the Mesopotamian model placing the earth firmly under a solid dome of heaven, or the Buddhist Wheel of Life detailing the 6 realms of samsara, these maps fill in those blank spaces with narrative and symbolism. They answer the primal questions of origin and destiny. Where did we come from? The dreamtime ancestors singing the world into being. What happens when we die? A journey through the Egyptian underworld, a weighing of the heart, a rebirth in a new realm dictated by karma. This act of cosmic cartography is a fundamental act of courage, a refusal to accept a meaningless void. Beyond offering explanation, these maps are dense repositories of encoded wisdom, seamlessly blending the ethical with the intensely practical. They are the original instruction manuals for living a good life within a specific cultural and environmental context. The Aboriginal songlines are a perfect fusion of this principle. They are at once a spiritual narrative of creation, a legal constitution dictating social law, and a practical survival guide to finding water and food across a vast desert. Similarly, the Jain Cosmological Map, with its meticulous layers of heavens and hells, is not just a picture of the afterlife but a rigorous ethical system. It teaches that every action generates karma, a literal substance that weighs down the soul, making the principle of non-violence or ahimsa not just a moral suggestion but a practical necessity for spiritual progress. This is why these maps were so enduring. They didn't just tell people what to believe, they showed them how to live. They embedded lessons on environmental stewardship, like the Inuit respect for Sedna, directly into the logic of survival. They wove lessons on justice, like the Greek afterlife where Sisyphus is forever bound to his task, into the very fabric of their stories. This wisdom was accessible to everyone, from the elder to the child, because it was conveyed not in dense philosophical texts, but in the unforgettable language of symbol and story. Perhaps most importantly, these myth maps are the ultimate architects of community identity. They answer the profound human need to belong, to be part of a story larger than oneself. They create what the scholar Karen Armstrong so brilliantly identified as a shared psychological and spiritual landscape. When a community collectively believes that their actions are essential to keeping the sun moving, as in the Aztec worldview, or that their king is the fisher king whose health is directly tied to the fertility of the land, it forges an unbreakable bond of shared responsibility. Participating in the rituals these maps prescribe, whether it's the Mithraic initiation through 7 planetary grades, or the communal combing of Sedna's hair by an Inuit Angakuk, reinforces this collective identity. It creates a powerful sense of us, a people who hold a unique map to reality, distinct from all others. This shared narrative is the glue that holds cultures together across generations, providing a resilient sense of purpose and place in the world. And this legacy is far from ancient history. We are still creating and using myth maps today. We just call them by different names. Our scientific models of the Big Bang and multiverse theory are our modern creation myths, providing a grand, evidence-based narrative for our origins. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, is a kind of modern map of the human psyche, categorizing and explaining the landscapes of mental suffering. Even our relentless consumption of superhero films and epic fantasy series speaks to this enduring need. These are our modern mythologies, filled with archetypal journeys, moral struggles, and maps of imagined worlds that help us navigate the complexities of our own. They show us that the human mind still craves the same things it always has: a story that makes sense of the chaos, a moral compass to guide our choices, and a sense of connection to something transcendent. The maps have changed their projections and their legends, but the territory of the human soul remains the same, forever seeking its bearings in a vast and mysterious universe. From the sacred songlines of Australia to the mystical Grail quests of medieval Europe, these 25 myth maps have served as the fundamental compass for human consciousness for thousands of years, providing profound wisdom, deep comfort, and essential direction in a world that existed long before the first written word. They stand as a powerful testament to an irrepressible human impulse, the need to make sense of our existence, to find our place within the vastness of the cosmos, and to navigate the intricate landscapes of life, death, and what may lie beyond. These maps remind us that storytelling and symbolism are not mere entertainment or simple decoration. They are the very bedrock of our nature, the primary tools we have always used to chart not just the physical world around us, but the invisible, internal terrain of the soul itself. As we reflect on these extraordinary ancient guides, it is worth turning that same curious gaze upon our own modern world. We are still fervent mapmakers after all. We may have traded papyrus scrolls for particle accelerators and oral chants for complex digital algorithms, but the underlying impulse remains beautifully, stubbornly unchanged. Our grand scientific models, the Big Bang, the expanding universe, the intricate dance of quantum mechanics, these are our modern creation myths. They provide us with a cosmic origin story, a narrative of where we came from and how everything began, fulfilling the same deep-seated need for explanation that the Popol Vuh did for the Maya or the Enuma Elish did for the Mesopotamians. Our diagnostic manuals for mental health are new cartographies of the human psyche, attempting to categorize and understand the complexities of suffering and resilience, much like the Buddhist Wheel of Life or the Kabbalistic Tree of Life did for their cultures. Even our sprawling digital narratives, the epic world building in online games, the complex mythologies of our most popular film franchises, are the communal stories we tell ourselves, creating shared symbols and moral frameworks for a new, globally connected generation. This invites a crucial and perhaps urgent question for us all to consider. What kind of maps are we creating for the future? What wisdom are we encoding into the stories we tell our children, the values we build into our technology, and the symbols we allow to dominate our culture? Are we drawing maps that promote connection and ecological harmony, like the Inuit or the Aboriginal peoples? Are we crafting narratives that encourage ethical reflection and personal responsibility, like the Jains or the Zoroastrians? Or are we, perhaps without even realizing it, creating maps that lead toward fragmentation, isolation, and short-term thinking? The responsibility of the mapmaker is a profound one, for the maps we create today will inevitably guide the consciousness of those who come after us. I would truly love to hear which of these ancient myth maps resonated most deeply with you. Was it the profound ecological wisdom of the songlines, the intricate spiritual architecture of the Kabbalistic tree, or the stark, motivating clarity of the Sumerian Netherworld? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Let's continue this exploration together as a community of curious minds. If this journey into the depths of prehistoric consciousness has sparked a sense of wonder in you, please consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the mysteries of human imagination, mythology, and the hidden patterns of history. Thank you so much for watching and for investing your time and curiosity in this exploration. May your own personal maps, wherever they may lead you, always guide you toward greater understanding, deeper connection,